This meeting is being recorded.
Great. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep. Yes.
Great. You can probably see from my backdrop that I'm officially joining the meeting from the select board meeting room. And, my internet at home has been somewhat spotty, so I'm not trusting Comcast to make good on its bargain, and I'm using the town's email. So
Mike, are you expecting Morgan Clark?
I'm not sure. Marcy, do you know if she's attending?
Okay, well, if she's one of yours, I'll let her in.
Yeah, she's one of ours.
Yes,
yes, she is, Terry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
all right. Is Terry, do you know if Tricia is joining us?
She was having technical difficulties, so she'll either join us by a laptop from the Cape or by phone. But if she's delayed, I would start without her.
Okay, well, it being 5:32, I guess we're going to do that. So I will. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Shelburne Select Board. I'm opening the Select Board meeting of June 17th at 5:32. And calling us to order. Rick, have you had a chance to review the minutes of June 3rd and June 12th?
I have. I've reviewed both. I find no changes that I spotted.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable with them as is. If you are as well, I'll move that we accept them.
And I will second. And if there's no further discussion, we'll bring to a vote. All in favor, Rick?
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the minutes are accepted. And we are on to department liaison reports. You want to go first, Rick?
Sure. Police Department, the damaged cruiser has now been taken to MHQ. They're going to assess the damage to the cruiser, determine what parts are transferable to the new car. Once this assessment is complete, they will prepare a quote for the replacement cruiser, which is what the insurance company is waiting for, an actual replacement cost. Other than that, nothing from the police department. The Emergency Operations Center has or is about or maybe right now conducting their first rehearsal training of the Emergency Operations Center volunteers. They've also, or our emergency management director has also started gathering information on a beaver problem on the pond next to the town garage. No further information on that at this point. He's also delivered a tabletop rack of publications on senior citizens emergency preparedness information to the senior center. And new traffic control cones and have been ordered, and a control sign, I guess, as well, using the EMPG 23 funds. And that's all I have this evening.
Great. Thank you very much, and welcome, Tricia. Glad you're able to make it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have met with Terry or been integrated or introduced at all to the workings of Town Hall, or if that's anything that you want to say anything about, but we're just doing department liaison reports. I don't know that you've been officially assigned, that we're about to do a whole rotation starting July 1st. But anything on your end that you want to talk about now?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't have anything right now about that.
Okay, good. Well, we will get you into the mix once
Yay.
we do all the reassignments there, which I think will be happening shortly. So from my end, the only update I have, we do have scheduled a Pratt meeting, so I'll have more to say once that happens. I believe that's coming up this week and on Thursday. And the highway department, I met with Mark, or talked with Mark Shippey today, and updated him on our successful hiring for his replacement. Terry, am I allowed to talk about that? Yes. Okay. So we have an accepted job offer from Jeffrey Johnston, who is the highway superintendent in Heath. And he will be joining us after he gives his 2-week notice. And I believe he will start on July 15th. Unfortunately, that is the week that Mark has scheduled a week of vacation. So we will be working with Jeff and Mark and Terry to figure out what a good onboarding week will be for Jeffrey. And Mark will be back for his final week. His last day is July 27th. So he will have a week of overlap with Jeffrey to pass the torch and share his wisdom about the department and the projects that they're doing right now. Speaking of which, they are doing some good general work, grading dirt roads. Joe Fink is using the over-the-rail mower to clear off the growing backdrop to increase visibility and prepare the way for Rick Grant, who is our new maintenance guy. And Rick will do the regular guardrail trimming and stuff like that. They've also painted some crosswalks in town that you may have noticed. And their big project is really preparing the big $1 million MassWorks grant rebuild of Greenfield Road. So they've started. They've started some drainage work on Cooper Lane for that project. Mark did respond to the concerns we discussed at the last meeting about potential Conservation Commission issues related to the project. He said there was some fill dumped over the bank while he was away when the crew was doing some shoulder building work, but he said none of it went into the brook. However, he said he will be meeting with Concom this week to talk with them about the MassWorks project. And he will be working with FERCog to get the contracted portion of that project underway. And I guess there are some pieces of the project like tree work that he can do through FERCog's pre-existing contracts. So he'll be moving on those things. And I did mention, the issue of Mark not having an engineering plan for that project, even though it's not required apparently, but it means that he's carrying a lot of knowledge about the project in his head, and he did not seem to think that was going to be a problem sort of transitioning that to Jeffrey. And Jeffrey did mention in our interview that he is experienced with those kinds of road rebuilding projects. So I'm confident the two of them can work that out. I think that's pretty much all I have on the highway stuff. Terry, anything else in regard to town hall or other things?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay. We are 5 minutes ahead of our first appointments. Let me just look and see what we've got here. The West County Senior Service District regarding fiscal officer, that's a longer one. How about new business? Bob Miller's offer to sponsor new stairs at the BSE band shell. Terry, do you have anything more on that besides the letter that Bob has given us?
No, I just think it's a great offer and he's more than welcome to sponsor that effort and make sure they're done properly, and thinks it would be worthwhile given that a variety of all ages use the band shell and he'd like them to have a safe access to it.
Yeah. Any discussion on the Rick or Tricia about that?
I just had a question about, so who's going to supervise the placement of the stairs and ensure that they're up to code and aren't going to blow away, all of those things?
There would have to be a building permit. The contractor building the stairs would pull a building permit, so they would be inspected.
And is he going to pay for that as well?
I don't think the permit is very expensive. It's like $50 or something or less.
Yeah, but the also for whoever the contractor is who's going to install it. I just want to make sure that he's saying, well, I bought the stairs, here you go. It doesn't sound
No, I
like
think Bob is offering to do this project for the town. Yeah.
the full project.
Yeah, I think we would probably want to, confirm that in writing with him, just so that he's has the same understanding as we do what the project amounts to. And yes, in my mind, it would mean saying to Bob, this requires a building permit and, a contractor who will meet code requirements and get a sign off from the building inspector. And, are you willing to finance that whole deal?
That would be great.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that would be awesome. I would love to have him do that and encourage such excellent volunteerism and donation to the town. That's really wonderful.
Great. Terry, I only have two questions about the project, or one is a comment and the other is a question. One is that my comment is that while I fully support this project and think it's great, especially since when we've used it, it's been a little awkward not having stairs there. But having stairs there probably means that the band shell space will get more sort of incidental use by young people and others. Do you have any concerns about, vandalism and, just increased access to that platform?
I don't. I believe there are stairs there now.
Oh, are there?
I believe so. Dr. Miller did mention that he enjoys watching children playing on the stage.
Oh,
While
okay.
their parents are watching nearby, so they're accessing it one way or another. And this would be a safer access.
Yeah. Okay. And then my only other question that sort of follows from that, which might proceed into our first appointment, is if we make a kind of code positive stairway to that space, are we putting ourselves on the hook for any handicap accessibility to that space or not?
I believe the space is owned by the school, and I would have to have Mike respond to that question. If improving the stairs would trigger handicapped accessibility of the band shell.
So I can jump in on that. The band shell and the school properties outside of those pieces used for town programming weren't part of the audits that we did on the facilities. So I would definitely encourage you when you're looking at the permit, so they'll have a value of the work and then you'll have the value of the property. You may be triggering requirements under 521 CMR, the mass code for accessibility, to bring other aspects of the site into compliance if they're not already. Having not audited that site as part of our scope, I don't know what you have there in terms of a ramp, but I can virtually guarantee you that if you don't have a ramp and you're putting stairs in, that you will trigger the need to have a ramp installed.
Okay, it's going to have to be a pretty big or pretty twisty ramp because it's a fairly high platform that we're talking about. It's probably 4.5 feet off the ground, maybe, I don't know, something like that.
If it's going over 30 inches, it's going to be a fairly complicated structure, but that's something that
It's
again,
more than
should
30
be-
inches.
Yeah, that's something that you need to look at before the schools do any work on that facility, because 521 CMR is a fairly complicated animal, and it will trigger. The more work you do, the more work it triggers. And ADA is the same way in that regard, that basically when you alter a route, a path of travel onto any facility or site, you trigger the need to bring in some cases adjacent elements, but in most cases, full compliance on the path of travel and the accessible route. So
Okay.
it certainly is something that can spiral. And it's not as simple as just looking at installing a set of stairs in most cases, especially for something like that. So you do have to have that ramp. That is part of building code for a space like that. So I would encourage you to look at those school properties. That, like I said, it wasn't part of the scope we looked at. We omitted the schools just because of the size of the schools and to keep it within the project budget. But those would be responsibilities of the school to make sure they're looking at those facilities as well. We looked at just the facilities used for town meeting programming, so at BSE.
So I have just one final question for Terry about this, which is, if this band shell is owned by the school, why are we discussing it? Does Bob just want our sort of vote of confidence in the project? But it sounds like it's not ours to approve.
I think he might believe that it's a partnership because it is this part of the school, the town uses it. But I'll definitely follow up with him after this evening and suggest that he speak with the school as well.
Okay, because it doesn't sound like we have jurisdiction to make this decision.
No, no more than we did when they were putting an orchard in. I think it's just a courtesy because
Okay.
it's in the town of Shelburne and the town uses that pavilion on occasion.
And
Okay,
it's owned by the district, correct?
That is correct.
And so the town doesn't have any landlord responsibilities with it.
That is correct.
I'm trying to think back to when we were talking about the schools and, between it being part of a regional district, I think I recall that basically title on that had passed to the district.
Yeah.
So
I guess I would just wrap up by saying that I share the positive feelings of my fellow board members, and I guess would ask you, Terry, to go back to Bob and tell him we generally like the idea, but feel like he should consult with the school, particularly about the ADA implications of any building there.
Okay.
Great. Well, we are now into our first appointment time. We kind of got a running start with that issue, but thank you for joining us, Mike Edwards, from the UMass Collins Center, and you're gonna talk to us about our ADA transition plan, yes?
yeah, I'm gonna let me share my screen to make sure this works properly. Whoever the host is gonna have to enable that.
Working on it. You should be all set.
Go ahead and lock it up. Yeah. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so, well, first, just real quick, Andrew, always good to see you again. And we haven't, I don't think, talked since the public safety merger stuff, and Terry, always nice to see you. So, I'll
Well, I just
correct
wanted
the-
to say thank you officially for all your work in bringing us through that process, and it seems to have come to a very positive result. So you deserve a lot of the credit for that. And
Well, I appreciate
I was
that.
sorry to hear about your accident, and glad you look to be on the road to recovery.
I am strong like bull, just kind of getting back into it right now. And honestly, you guys couldn't have had a better chief to work with. So, Greg's fantastic. You really lucked out with him. And that I did very little except kind of corral the paperwork on that one. That was really between Terry and Greg and Heather Butler. And the working group we had, it was you couldn't have asked for better conditions for a project like that. I think it worked out wonderfully. This was another one that I was working on for you guys, and Andrew, I'm no longer with the Collins Center. I left several months back. I'm now with the town of Westford, but when I left, I had told Terry and told my team there, whenever this comes up, just give me a holler and I'll come do the presentation, because I think I probably had the most, Marcy and I had the most hands in it, and I actually did a lot of your facility audits. So it's good to come back and kind of bring everything full circle and get it wrapped up. So on my side, I've also got Marcy Birmingham and Kelsey Edmonds. They're two of the people that worked on this, along with a third, David Pomerantz, who was unable to join us because he's on vacation. I think he's in Wales right now. Didn't feel like with the time change it was going to work for him to be here to talk about the facilities piece, but I can answer any questions that are on that. So all that said, I'd kind of start moving forward here. I think, just make sure. Okay. All right. So I'm figuring out how to make my slides advance with the share screen. So what I'll talk about really is just a summary of the project, talk about the final report that you guys have in your hands. And then I'm going to talk through really the administrative findings and the requirements around that, the programming piece, and then the facility stuff, just in a kind of a high level overview, because I think it's important to understand my approach on these. I've been on the implementation side of this for a number of years with the city I worked previous to joining the Collins Center, and so I have a pretty good understanding of really what it takes to drive the change that you need to actually make things accessible moving forward. And I say all that because I think it's important to recognize you're never going to be able to fix everything that we found on your buildings. You'll just never have the money. It's the reality. It's unfortunate. And I think, like every other town out there, when they do these kinds of audits, they look at the price tag and all the things that are associated with fixing it, and their first response is, we can't possibly afford to do that. And they're right. And it's unfortunate. Their second question usually is, how did some of these things happen in the first place? So that's actually where I like to kind of put the focus, is on the administrative side, because I see most of the issues that you have, and you're not alone in all the other towns that we've worked with. They're really symptoms of some things that you need to address, kind of organizational structure wise, so that you just don't make the same errors twice moving forward. Because you'll see in the audits, if you looked at the facility audits, there's some newer things that have been built that there were some minor problems on, some issues, and you know, they're more symptoms of things like plan review processes and permitting processes, that if you correct those things moving forward, you at least won't be dealing with these things again. The other piece of it, and this is kind of the implementation side, is when you look at all this facility stuff, the way these plans work, they're required by basically by the federal government as a civil rights law, that you have a plan to deal with your deficiencies, that you go out, you identify all the problems you have, and then you make a plan to fix it. Well, we don't like to put timelines on a lot of the capital investment stuff, because what we'd rather see is that you take this and use it to inform your capital budgeting and your planning processes moving forward. So it's not uncommon to get a plan like this and have timelines that are right out of the gate completely unrealistic and unattainable, given your financial constraints and given the reality of town meeting, the reality of the budgeting environment that you're working in. So what we do is really identify everything that we can by looking at those facilities. We look at the programmatic stuff. And then we look at, kind of the low hanging fruit, the administrative requirements, the technology changes and the training stuff you can do internally so that you set yourselves up for just doing things right repeatedly moving forward. I will say very, very rarely, and certainly in the case of Shelburne, we didn't have any real obvious issues from a programmatic standpoint. I mean, the staff does everything they can to request when they get a request for accommodation. There's no indication whatsoever that anybody was willfully trying not to do anything or anything like that. So what we like to see are, documentation of processes and fixing processes moving forward so that really you have a good defensive document if you're ever to get challenged on any of this stuff. So that's really my goal with these reports, is to have something that lets you kind of look at, ground up organizationally, how do we put the pieces in place to make sure that we're building things right, we're following the code. The band shell, that example, that's a good one, because that kind of tells you, okay, we got to look at, when we have opportunities like that, we really should be looking at all the accessibility aspects of it. And even before you start thinking about a project, thinking about how the scope can creep into meeting all of these code requirements. And that's going to be challenging for a town of your size, because you don't have your own building inspector. You're relying on FERCog's building inspection program. That's something we've seen with some other communities that use that as well, is they're not necessarily proactive on looking at kind of the other things that are outside of what is directly required by a permit. So those are the things that you should be looking at, is when you talk to them on a permit for a project like this, are they looking at potential other triggers for 521 compliance, for ADA compliance, and helping you think through the true scope of a project, because very rarely is it limited to just a set of stairs. It's going to touch a lot of other things. So I'll just kind of jump right into the other stuff here. And we'll talk through each one of these things as we go. And if anybody has any questions as we go, ask them. It's a small crowd, so I don't mind kind of answering things as we go. I think that's an easier way to do it. And then we'll talk through some of the next steps and what you guys have to get this thing, wrapped up from your perspective, and then, how you want to move forward. So what we did was an audit of 6 of the buildings that the town owns. And our audit is basically looking at everything from an ADA perspective, not 521 CMR, because there are a couple of subtle differences. And the reason we do from the ADA building codes, which are, and I think you guys are under, I think your residential commercial codes are probably the 2021 versions, might be 2018, but in any case, they've been the same since around 2010. But the building code and the ADA guidance, ADAG, are largely 99% identical at this point. There's a few little variations here and there, but by and large, all of your building code is the same across. 521 CMR, which is Massachusetts building code, is essentially more stringent, and it has more triggers for remedial work. The difference and the reason that we use the ADAG requirements is you actually have an affirmative obligation to address deficiencies on ADAG, which means essentially you've got to fix stuff that is already out of compliance. 521 CMR, you don't have to do that until you actually begin alterations on something. So we audit under the ADAG requirements because of that affirmative obligation. That's something that your architects, your designers, hopefully your building inspector will be aware of, but those are questions that you should be asking when you guys look at major projects, but also minor repairs and renovations on anything existing. We also looked at the downtown business district, and this was more of a kind of an advisory look because there's a big difference in both building code and the ADA requirements between a site and right-of-way. Currently, there is no enforceable standard on right-of-way. That is going to change any day. because they are in the process right now. They have been since 2011 of finalizing what they call PROAG, the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, that will make an enforceable standard for public rights of way. So sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, things that aren't associated with a site outside of a property boundary and on right of way. So we looked at the business district because most of that property in the business district is in the right of way. There is some overlap between private facilities and then some between a few of your town facilities. On the town facilities abutting that business district, we did look at those exhaustively. So the library, the Village Information Center and Town Hall. And in those cases, we do look at, the pedestrian features and the right of way that are immediately serving those. Because, there you do have some enforceable standards that have to be adhered to. So that's kind of an overview on the audit. The departmental questionnaires we submitted through Terry, and they basically ask questions around departmental programming. And for the most part, what we find is that everybody pretty much makes the same kind of critical, I'm not going to call them mistakes, but they have the practices in place that are the same across most departments, the way documents are handled, the way any requests for accommodation are handled. So we make recommendations around what we find from those questionnaires in the report. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the programmatic stuff. But we do that, one, because it's a requirement of the Title II guidelines, but it does give us an idea kind of where are general issues that we have across customer service, across the way things are handled internally. Those are usually the areas that you can make some pretty immediate and effective change and set things right moving forward. We do a public input survey, and you'll see in the appendix that you've got, the full scope of that. Small town, not a huge response, not uncommon. There's a requirement for the transition plans that you take public comment. They're really vague on what that means. So our perspective has always been overdo that piece of it a little bit. So we do a survey that was rolled out to the public. It was through Marcy, I can't remember if that was through SurveyMonkey or through Qualtrics. We had two different platforms we were using. But that just kind of helps us identify, okay, are there any things people are really bringing out that are issues? So we highlight those results in the public input piece, and you'll have another required public input part that I'll talk about in the next steps. But this is kind of going above and beyond, so we make sure we're really engaging the public where we can and getting information from as many places as we possibly can. Another big piece that we do, and this is mostly Kelsey handles this piece, we audit your website. We look at your communications. We look at how you're posting documents. We look at how you're posting videos or anything like that, how you're using social media, and give you a full series of recommendations around that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the website piece when we get into that slide. And then you get your final report. And I'm assuming everybody at this point has had a chance to at least see it. And Terry, I think you guys have had that for a little bit at this point. So I think it's been sitting with you guys in a draft form that is basically final unless you have any comments to add to it. And you've got the body of the report, which kind of goes through all of those pieces. But then those facility audits, the photo caption results at the end that kind of talk through the building code, the specific issues you have, those are going to be important for you moving forward as you undertake renovations, as you start going through your capital planning process and figure out, okay, what do we need to fix? And there's a number of different ways that you can address, how you prioritize things and what can you do in-house? What can you do with volunteer work? What do you want to push out to contractors? But we like to kind of put that on you. Ultimately, it needs to be your plan, and it needs to fit you so that it needs to really fit what you can accomplish. So I always tell people, take this and spend a year or two thinking about how you can integrate this into your longer term planning efforts so that you don't have a plan that you fail. right out of the gate because it's unrealistic. So there's a lot of differing guidelines on how fast you need to address things. You need to fix these things as quick as you reasonably can within your budget environment, within your capital planning environment. So make a plan when you finish it that is realistic and you can achieve. Don't set yourself up for failure by saying you're going to fix all this stuff in the first 6 months. And that's the kind of thing that when you have a plan and you follow it, you're not going to have a huge problem from the state and the feds. If you have a plan that you don't follow at all, you're going to have a problem if you get complaints and you get issues. So we'll talk about that a little bit in the next step so you have a little bit better idea of what that means. So the administrative findings that we had, one, you're a small town. So the ADA requires on a agency that's 50 or more employees that you have an ADA coordinator. Obviously, you guys are well under that, so we don't make that recommendation. What we instead do is basically just recommend that general function kind of stays within the town administrator's purview, but that it's not an official ADA coordinator role. That comes with some additional things. I think this is something that you guys need to figure out what works with the capacity you have. I'm a huge fan of a team approach where, you know, whoever's in charge of your IT stuff, they bite off the piece around website accessibility. Whoever's in charge of your facilities, they bite off the piece around that, and that you just keep up with it. But we don't make the recommendation for a town of your size unless it makes sense and you want to take on that role to have an ADA coordinator. So you won't find that recommendation in the report, nor is there a requirement to do so.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
My understanding is that Terry is performing the function of our ADA coordinator, and we hope will continue to do so, or that role will be, effectively part of the town administrator job description. Is that an acceptable approach?
Well, again, there's no requirement that you have a named ADA coordinator. The requirement is that the various responsibilities of the town under Title II, which include making sure your notices are posted, making sure you have a grievance procedure, that those fall to the town at that point. Now, how you choose to do that organizationally, I think that's a conversation for the board and for Terry to figure out what makes the most sense. But it's a best practice. Is it a requirement? No. So
here's my other question, looking at the key findings. Second one is saying to create a dedicated email account. I guess my question for Terry is, do we already have a separate ADA email account, or is it going to your email?
I don't see where it says to create. Oh, we do not have a dedicated email account. We do have a landing page on our website now, including all the appropriate notices. But people generally reach out to me for everything.
Yeah, I would say that would make sense to me. I'm not sure that we need a separate ADA email account unless Mike is telling us that's an essential part of the deal.
It's not an essential part of the deal. The reason we recommend this and pretty much do this across the board is you're going to have a lot of documents that you're required to have the notice of non-discrimination on. Some of those documents are going to be printed and may not be updated for years. Your calendar hopefully would be updated every year, but brochures and things like that, notices that are showing up in a bunch of different places. If you have, say, Terry were to leave, where does her email then go? The other reason is because it doesn't hurt to have a couple of people watching those so that you make sure something doesn't get missed. What we typically recommend is like accessibility at shelburne.org or whatever your email is as an alias that goes to Terry, goes to somebody else, just to make sure that you've got some continuity, because what you don't ever want to do is you don't want to have a complaint be made and not know 100% sure that it was received or followed up on. So it's a recommendation. It's not a requirement. But it is a good practice in terms of continuity and then making sure you just don't have to update things on a regular basis. So that's why that one shows up in there. And I did notice that since you guys have had this, I know Terry has done a lot of the pieces that are in that report already. In terms of, the landing page, there's probably some facility work that's already been done. I know a lot of the recommendations we had for the front of town hall have probably been updated. So, our report has all those. I would not change any of those recommendations. I would simply mark them as complete. Take the credit for getting those things fixed, but the dedicated email accounts, really, it's up to you whether that makes sense. It does save you some time down the road, and it makes sure you have a little bit of redundancy, just so you don't lose things. It also gives you a really good ability to archive things, because one of the most important pieces that you guys have is documenting and retaining documentation on how you address any complaints. And that having everything go to one email address, even if it's redistributed internally, is a good way to kind of keep track of all that stuff so that you have it. Who knows, Terry could win the lottery and go retire to a beautiful beach island tomorrow. Continuity is going to be important on something like this because you do have a significant liability if you don't follow through on those things. Okay, so the other one.
We have a rule that Terry is not allowed to buy lottery tickets.
Well, you can stop that when she's supporting education when she does that. So, but it's a good practice to have but there's other ways to make sure that's being addressed. So we make the recommendation. If you guys choose to follow it in a different way, just document it. That's really the most important thing you do. And that's one of the reasons, when we give you this report, you get it in a Word version as well. Make notes, document, keep track of the things that you do over time to address it. Because if you ever do get a complaint that rises to the state level, or God forbid, rises to DOJ, you want to be able to hold this thing up and say, look, here in red font are all the things we did to address this. Here's the things we didn't do, and here's why. So document. You got to look at this as a defensive manual. So couple just other little minor things, and this last bullet largely is making sure that you guys have just the resources to ensure compliance. And the biggest piece of this, there's a few minor things that you can keep in-house, around having digital levels, for example, for your highway guy or whoever's responsible for sidewalks, having somebody internal that can check facility projects, especially if you guys are using smaller contractors or if you're using volunteers, having an understanding of the basic building codes around access and being able to follow up on their work. Don't ever trust a contractor to do exactly what's in the contract. And if you have that level of confidence in your regional building inspector, great. But document, because ultimately it's the town that's on the hook for all of those projects. And often you don't find the issues until well after the insurances have all lapsed. And you can't go after anybody. You find them years after the fact. And, an architect's errors and omissions insurance coverage is expired. A contractor's performance bond is expired. So you don't have the ability to recover. So it's always a good idea if you have a regional building inspector and they're willing to put in that extra time to go back and check things like levels on ramps, which quite often they don't. You've got to catch them before those contracts are fully closed out. So there's a few things you can purchase on your own. I always recommend a 2-foot digital level. That's a good thing to have, only because that's what seems to be widely accepted in court. So you want that. But provide some training resources, provide budgets for training so that employees can attend trainings and actually learn these things. It doesn't take a huge amount. Mass Office on Disability has a ton of great training programs, some of which are free, some of them are minor expenses. Architectural Access Board has some good ones. DOJ has a ton. And there's there's just a wealth of really good options out there, but you've got to be able to pay your staff to go to these things. Give them the time during the day to attend some of these trainings, but that goes pretty much across the board. And, we'd love to see a regular training schedule, on an annual basis for how to make accessible PDFs, basics on polling place accessibility, things like that, and just make that part of the regular trainings that people do. And if you look at the report, you'll see those recommendations spelled out in a little bit more detail. And also in the appendices, there's a whole section on resources that's got links to all the different, sites that'll have really good training opportunities. I would encourage you, just make sure that I know professional development winds up being the first thing that gets axed out of municipal budgets when FinCom gets their pencil sharpened. It's very important that they get the training in these things because, this is your ounce of prevention right here. So just make sure that you've got, that the board is supporting staff in doing their trainings on these things moving down the line. Generally speaking, from an ADA perspective, yes, you have building codes, but it's actually your programs that are required to be compliant. So all the different programs that the town offers have to be compliant. The buildings are a way to deliver those programs. And so obviously you have to have an accessible building to deliver an accessible program. But when you have a very resource limited environment, you have older buildings, you have challenges with structures, you have, obviously cash issues with addressing things that have been previously identified as non-compliant, then you fall back on the need to make that program accessible. So where you have issues of facility modifications that you can't possibly do, you need to be looking at alternative ways to offer those programs. And these don't have to be monumental shifts. Generally speaking, your website's your best friend. Making things available for alternate ways to deliver those programs, using the website, leveraging the website to its maximum extent where you have buildings that are non-accessible, and then documenting how you had programmatic changes to overcome the short-term problem of a building being inaccessible. And by and large, your buildings were not a huge problem. You had issues at all of them, but none of them I would consider to be major barriers to being able to get into a building. Couple come to mind in terms of, obviously the original public library, there's zero chance that thing is ever going to be accessible. You'll never make it happen on a building that old with that site and that building the way that it is. So having things like interlibrary loan program well documented, having it on the website that, hey, our library program is actually 2 different facilities. You can come to this one and we'll provide you the same level of service. But you have to document those things. You have to make sure they're noticed well on the website so that people understand, oh, I can't get to that library, but I can get to this one and access the program. Same thing for
Mike, I have a question there.
Yes.
Just to jump in. We do have a lift in that library, and it does mean that an person needing it would have to enter through the rear entrance. Is that not considered accessible enough because they can't go in the front door?
Are you talking the Arms Library or the public library?
Oh, I'm sorry. You were talking about the Shelburne Free.
Yes, the Arms Library actually wasn't bad. It had issues with you have a lot of issues on that site in terms of you have virtually no accessible path from the right of way because you have to go around the back, and they're going through that bank drive-through to get to the back. So again, you're not going to be able to fix this right away, but just when we were over there looking at it, we're thinking, boy, a future renovation that actually took some of that grass and made a walkway and started to look at the back part of that building would probably solve a lot of the access problems. The parking was a bit of a mess. The route into the building where the elevator is in the back was a mess. And we identified all those things in the report. But, right now, to me, the biggest issue there is the lack of access from the right of way. The walkway itself was a relatively small fix, the one that actually leads into the building from the parking area. Some question, we weren't able to get a good answer on who actually owns the parking. And whether you know what it would take to re-sign and fix the parking that was there. But those are things that the library was one of the higher priority things we identified was the access into that library. Now, short-term solutions for things like this, and this is in the report, you can offer programmatic modifications, bring things out to people curbside, things your staff is already doing. In talking with the director there, they're not denying access to any service. They're bending over backwards to provide them for people. Document it, make it available on the website, make it clear. Hey, if you have an access problem getting in, call us. We'll come out and meet you. We'll figure something out. That's that programmatic modification stuff that they're doing now. It's just not documented. So, you know, what you'll do is you'll take this report and you'll look at it kind of department by department, and you'll say, okay, what are we doing to address this? Have we had any complaints on this? Is this an actual problem that we're finding? And then make some changes on the way that, you know, they write it up in the website and document what you're doing to comply. And at the same time, make a plan to fix it, because you have to fix those issues that you have at the library. When you fix it is going to depend on when you have the funding to do it, and, you know, actively seek some grants. Now you have this grant, or you have the transition plan. This now opens you up for the ability to apply for MOD implementation grants, which is, you know, those are up to $250,000. You didn't have those until you had this plan in place. So now you have that. You can apply for grants using this plan as your record of why you need to make these repairs. So, you know, we do look at your comprehensive emergency management plan. We had some recommendations in there for just additional language and to make sure that you're considering all the types of people that might need to take advantage of shelters, especially. So you'll want to look at that and just make sure you're looking at our recommendations and incorporating those things into there. We didn't find a service animal policy. Terry, I don't know if that's been put in place since you guys got the report.
Yes, it has.
Perfect. Check that one off. So you're making progress on those things.
Question about that, Mike. What happens when you have competing disabilities? Like if you have people who need a service animal and you have other people who have severe animal allergies and they're coming to the same meeting, what's the approach there?
Well, there's actually some guidance out of DOJ on that. And I can't give you the exact answer, but basically you have to accommodate both. Now, how you choose to do that, you guys have some discretion, and there's actually pretty strict. It didn't used to be the case where service animals were loosely regulated. Now they've actually got a very strong definition around what qualifies as a service animal. And we've got the links in the document to kind of point you to those pieces of guidance out there. It's not just slapping a vest on a dog and calling it a service animal anymore. You're not bringing a horse in. You know, therapeutic ponies, emotional support animals are no longer defined as service animals. The dog, it basically has to be a dog, and it has to be trained to perform a specific task that limits your life ability. So the definition has significantly been reduced. And there, you know, the allergy question has actually been dealt with. I don't know the exact ruling off the top of my head, but that has been dealt with. And there's guidance on the DOJ website around that. And it was some fairly broad guidance because I think actually it came up over a latex allergy and use of an athletic facility. But you'll find information on that specifically on the DOJ's website. Mass Office of Disability will give you some guidance, but not anything that is, you know, legally binding. It's service animals are kind of one of those evolving things. I think they recognize that they had some issues with the definition and have fixed that over the last 5 years or so. But it, quite frankly, it got out of hand. But, you know, the short answer is and this applies to really any request for accommodation, you work with the people making it and you find something that works for everybody. The most important thing, and this is what DOJ will look at, this is what really anybody will look at, this is what MOD will look at, is did you go through a deliberate process where you worked with the person making the request and find something that worked for both of you? It's back and forth. There's not going to be pat answers on accommodating a request. So we just went through this in the town of Westford over issues with town meeting access. And I personally had to work with, a dozen people to figure out, okay, how can we accommodate your issue at town meeting? And every request we handled a little bit different. There wasn't a standard answer. It was, we went through a process, we documented the process. At the end of the day, we agreed this is the best we can do and this is the best you can accept, and that's what worked. We documented it, we feel comfortable with it. So that's the general answer on any request for accommodation. There's certain things that you can't deny on their face. If somebody requests sign language interpreter, you're pretty much providing a sign language interpreter. If somebody requests captioning be available on public meetings, you're pretty much having to do that unless you can demonstrate it's cost prohibitive. But a lot of the other things like allergies, photosensitivity, a lot of the new neurodiverse populations that are having issues with different elements of the built environment, you're working through those on a case-by-case basis because there's no enforceable standard. And they haven't really been dealt with in many cases in the courts. So hopefully that was a really long way to answer your question, Andrew, but it's very much, it depends. And it ultimately falls back on the town's willingness to engage with the person making the request and just working something out that you can do. So, and very rarely doesn't that lead to something that is at least acceptable and helps you identify, okay, we need to work on this in the future. Okay, so the last bullet here is one that we got around, this was one of the only school facility we really looked at, and we went ahead and did a pretty comprehensive review of Buckland Shelburne Elementary because it's used for town meeting. And we really look at, okay, everything from the right of way to that auditorium, the parking and the access around that parking lot and from the parking spaces. Generally speaking, it wasn't horrible. Looking at some of the newer work that they had done around sidewalks and walkways, that's one of the reasons that you really need to have a lot more time spent in the plan review. That walkway that goes from the side parking up along, I think there's, if I remember right, there were 2 accessible spaces, and then you have a walkway that goes up and connects with the bus drop off and the parent drop off area that looked like it had been constructed probably within the last 10 years, was woefully out of compliance with slope. And that's identified in the report. That's one of those things you look at and you're like, well, this should have been caught. So those are the pieces that need to be looked at, is how you accommodate access to that auditorium for town meeting. And you've got plenty of space and plenty of space to make temporary spaces and temporary access for town meetings specifically. I understand they let people park kind of at that back door and come in if they make a request. Terry, is that right?
People generally come in the front door, but they certainly could knock on the back door and I could open that as well. We pretty much have run of the cafeteria area during our town meetings.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Town meeting access it's a huge issue across the state right now, and we've actually had a bunch of conversations with MOD over
Excuse me,
town
Mike.
meetings. Yes.
Mike, Andrew, we have a published public hearing scheduled for 6:30, and it is 6:30. I think we need to pause this and do our public hearing. Would that be correct?
Terry, what's your advice on that?
It is an advertised legal public hearing. Mike, would you be able to stick around for 15?
Yeah, I can pause and come back to this after the hearing. Can you take me out of order on that?
Yes.
Thank you for your willingness to accommodate us there on our request.
Not a problem.
For access to the public hearing here. But good. If you want to stop sharing, thank you. Good. So let me come back here. Great. Jeff Bettner, are you here?
I am here.
There is Jeff, the chair of our streetlight committee. We'll open the public hearing regarding proposed streetlight shutoffs, and Jeff, I will let you take it away.
Okay. Terry, if you could have me share the screen.
Sure. You should be all set.
Are you seeing a map at this point?
I am, yes.
Okay. So I guess first we should just go through what procedures we want to have for it. I'll say a little bit about what we've done for each of the lights that we were interested in. Originally, we had about 10 lights that we were interested in.
Can you speak a little louder, Jeff? You're a little faint.
Okay, let me turn it up. Hang on, sorry, that's the size. That is not the sound.
And just for orienting the attendees of this hearing, do those orange C circles represent just streetlights or ones that you're proposing to shut off?
No, these are just street lights, and the ones with arrows to them are the ones that we'll be talking about.
Okay.
For tonight. And just to give a kind of an overview, what we did is the committee picked out about 10 lights that we were interested in, just seeing if people would be open to losing those lights, because in some cases they're redundant, some cases, well, there's a lot of different reasons, and we'll go through some of the reasons as we're going. So we flyered all the houses on both sides of the street, and I talked to as many neighbors as I possibly could. We also put it in the two-town news for tonight, and Terry posted it as well. So hopefully we got to as many people as we could possibly do in short order. And we've also flagged each of the poles that's of interest, and so that they would know which poles are there, and they're actually flyered on each pole as well. So then that brings us to, we also talked to the police chief Bardwell, and he basically also agrees that he didn't have any problem with any of the 10 lights necessarily. Since then, we've actually had feedback on several of the lights. But four of those lights, we decided that we would just pull from the thing after talking to neighbors, that we just didn't think it was, we thought they had really good suggestions of why they shouldn't lose their lights, and so we backtracked on a few of the lights. So we're down to about for 7 lights that we had interest in. In the process, in the last 2 days, on Gardner Street and Warren, which, as you see here, is the little community, it's actually a really well lit up thing. About 10% of our lights are actually in this little neighborhood. So we were wondering if we could cull it back a little bit. But after talking to the neighbors on Gardner, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but both the houses across and next to the light, you probably can't see it, but the houses closest to the two to the Gardner light 31-2, which is the green arrow pointing to it. They actually really wanted to keep the lights. And same with Warren Avenue, the woman who lived right directly next to the house, Patricia, and one of her neighbors really were lobbying to not have these lights removed. So I think if, depending on if there's any other questions, I'd be tempted to just say we should probably vote to just hang on to those 2 lights, or we might not even have to vote for it, because if we leave them on, they'll just become part of the regular thing. So I'd be tempted to say we'll just remove these 2 lights from discussion or so, which will take me to the next set of lights. All right, so that's going to take us to, hang on. All right, so that's going to take us to Water Street. So on Water Street, where it turns into Main Street, that's the 78-14 light is one that was actually part of, well, I can actually show you a picture of that light. So this is the pole in the middle with the blue arrow is the pole that stands from the old Water Street. Water Street used to go to the right of that pole all the way across. And so this light was originally to light up Water Street when it went through. Since then, they detoured Water Street over to Main, which is the road that you can see below is now curved. That puts this pole about 25 feet from Main Street and about 20 some odd feet from Water Street. So in order to actually have it do anything for either road, you would need about a 30 or 40 foot arm on the pole. So we're just suggesting that really this light has no function, and it's mostly lighting up a house and a driveway. Well, 2 houses and a driveway. And the neighbors have been really supportive of seeing this one just go away, in part so that they can actually get sleep. So I would strongly suggest that we vote to remove 7814. And I don't know if I noticed there's a few people on tonight. Jill Conley is one of those. She lives pretty close to that light. If we can.
Jeff, I would say just advising you is to move your focus along to ones that need more advocacy, and we'll come back to these. That one looks like a no-brainer.
Okay, that's good. All right. Well, the next one is right next to that light. So that's Jill Conley's that is actually here tonight, and she could actually speak for that one. But let me actually go down to the next. Oh, hang on.
I guess one question I have for you is, are there any of the 5 lights remaining that you're proposing to shut off that are contested in terms of having people on both sides of yay or nay?
No, actually, at this point, we're pretty supportive. I think we can rip through them pretty fast. They're all generally, as far as I know, there's no support against unless someone's here tonight that speaks up. But I've had no feedback on any of these lights for. So this is Jill Conley's light at 7811. It's another one that's kind of a no-brainer. This was one of the first ones that Eversource put up as a 50 watt, I think, LED, and it just lit up the house on both sides. They attempted to shield it, but it just threw the light to the other side. Then they cut back went to a 30 watt, then a 35 watt, then a 30 watt. And eventually Terry, I think, got them to go back to a sodium vapor light, just to calm it in the short run. So both Jill on the left side of this pole and Jeff on the right side, which is the house closest to it, he's the apartment closest to the light, would just love to see this light go away. It's basically, it's going to be a really tricky one even to shield, because Jeff's house on the right, even with a pretty strong shield, is probably going to get lit up a little bit. So I think the simplest solution is to actually remove this light. Okay. And Jill is here if you want to hear from her. I think she could unmute. But
I will. There will be an opportunity for public comment, and I will encourage people to make their comments judiciously if they feel like they're really needed.
Right. Yeah. As long as we've got support. Okay. So this brings us to Bridge Street. This may have some controversy, although I'm surprised how little controversy I had with any of these, because Bridge Street's a pretty major road. What you can see is that I don't know if you can, I don't know how to show my arrow, but just above the arrow for 10-5, to the left of that light is actually the nursing home facility, and you can no, I don't have it in that picture, but that's the nursing home, and they're actually surrounded by 3 lights at the moment, and the first 2 are actually probably good because the one at the intersection of High Street and Bridge Street is a major thoroughfare, so we need to light that up. The light right above that, that's not labeled, across from the facility, is actually in the park. It lights up pretty much the parking lot to the nursing facility, which is also probably a good thing because a lot of ambulances and things have to get in and get out, and police need to check it out on a pretty regular basis. So I highly recommend keeping those 2 lights. But then there's so much redundancy here because like one pole over is 10-8. That's near the funeral home across the street. So I talked to and also and then 10-5 is behind the nursing home facility, and that one actually it's on the next page. So this is the nursing home. This is the that 10-5. There's the nursing home facility on the right, the big white building. And this light that you can see on the left is basically just an open field to the back windows, and so those bedrooms are just being lit up like all night long. So that's one of the issues. Tom Johnson lives in the house behind. He's complained about the backlighting from that too. We could address the backlighting. That is a possibility. But I think we're kind of in the as a committee, we've been kind of thinking that these 2 extra lights are just kind of redundant. They're not really serving a major function. This whole area is quite well lit. It will be a bit of a dark space because it's a few poles apart, but I think you won't really even notice it. And so we're recommending that both 10-8 and 10-5 disappear. And that brings us to the last light, which is this one is on let's see. So this is on Maple Street, just north of where Bridge and South Maple come together. This is a really dangerous intersection, so we need to keep it really well lit. And that's one of the reasons why we pulled one of the lights from the list that we were thinking was really close to another light, but I think we're going to keep this area very well lit. However, the 46-B1 light that is by Yana and Dave's house on the corner, it's a real historic home, is just blasted by the light. You can see this is the light, and this is one of the oldest homes in Shelburne. And I've talked to all the neighbors on both sides, and people are quite supportive of letting that light go as long as we keep the intersection well lit. But I think that would really help because this is Yana and Dave's bedroom is to the left side of that light. So it would be just a good thing to do, and I don't think it'll harm the street. There's only a few houses on the street at that point. There's 6, it's basically that light is lighting up 6 houses. Probably when we take it away, the light at the main intersection, which is going to be slightly brighter when we're done, will take the place of what that's done. So really that's the lights that we're proposing to remove, and there's basically 5 lights to remove, and I don't know if you have to vote to keep them. I'd say the other ones we don't necessarily have to vote to keep unless you feel like that's a procedural thing.
I think that we only need to discuss and vote upon the lights that you are recommending to remove.
Okay, so just be
So I
those.
think you got 5, and
Yep.
what I would suggest is if you want to make a motion to do that and have it seconded, then we can have discussion.
Okay.
And then we can come back and vote when the discussion is done.
Sure. Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion that we vote to remove 5 lights, the 78/14, 78/11, 10-8, 10-5, and 46-B1.
Great. Is there a second?
Procedurally, if he can make a motion,
Oh, yeah, I don't know if I can.
then I'm,
That's a good.
I'm willing to accept it. If not, I'll
Oh,
make
I'm
the said
sorry.
motion.
I was just thinking, because
That's
he was
right.
chair of the committee, but, if you want to make
No,
that
that's
motion, Rick, why don't you go ahead?
I will move the same as he did, to removal of
Okay,
those
and- And do
five.
thank you
lights.
for that, Rick. Do we have a
Thanks,
second?
Rick.
I'll second.
All right, the motion has been made by Rick and seconded by Tricia. And we now have discussion. I'm going to start with the select board and see, if Rick, do you have questions or comments?
No, I agree that from everything I've heard so far from the Streetlight Committee, that those five are prudent. I did double check with the chief and confirm what Jeff said, that he has viewed each location and has no problem with the removal of those five. So I don't have a problem with it, but I'm anxious to hear what the public may say.
All right, Tricia, how about you?
I just had a couple questions about the light on this page, the one that's right below the 46-B1, not the one at the intersection, the one just below that.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there a need for that one too? Do the
Well,
neighbors want that
The
one?
neighbors really wanted that one, yeah.
Okay.
It
That's
was-
where
it was-
that driveway is?
Yes, it's a 50-50 mix. There's a lot of dog walkers there, and a lot of them try crossing there, even though it's not a real good crosswalk. The crosswalk is actually supposed to be across Maple Street and across Bridge, but either way you do it, it's just a really dangerous crosswalk area because cars come speeding around that bend and don't slow down much at all. So that's been kind of an issue, and we did have the only real negative comments I had or the only person who wasn't one person who really wanted to see it removed because it lit up his house, and I think I can address that with shields, and it should be fine. It was originally on our agenda to remove, but from talking with the neighbors, we just kind of felt like we should pull it from the list. It is a really dangerous corner, and it's kind of having redundant light there isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's such a bad accident. Terry and I know that one because that light actually went out at Christmas time last year, and we had a head-on collision there when that light was out, even with the other lights on. So it's a dangerous spot. So.
Okay, the other question I had was about Water Street. So it looked
Yep.
like that whole long area now is going to be completely dark. And I just wanted to confirm, did the chief have any concerns at all about the removal of the one just below where your cursor is right now, the 78/11?
Yep.
Because with the removal of that one in 7814, that's
Yep.
all dark now.
It is dark, but it's also that's to the right area where the cursor is going around now. If you can see that, that's where
the
the
green.
town commons are. Yeah, and actually, it's fairly well lit from these two lights across the street on Main Street. In fact, one of those lights is so bright right now that they can actually see it at the house across from 7811. So it actually lights up that park at night. I don't think it'll be an issue. It will be a slightly dark spot for a few houses, but those are the people who really wanted to see it go. So
Okay.
I don't have too much of a. I mean, it's also the kind of thing where if it's really bad, we can always put one back. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it would be good to solve it now. And I think the way to solve it best is just to try it without it and see if we
That's
can
great.
help.
And
And
Sorry,
I
go
want to
ahead.
thank you. Thank you for all your work on this. It's
Okay.
really amazing, and I appreciate what you've done for all of us. And
No,
I yield the floor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rick, I mean, Jeff, I just have a general question before I turn it open to the public, which is, if we vote tonight to go ahead and remove these 5 lights, and then you begin the process of dismantling, buying the lights, dismantling the sodium vapor and putting in the new lights and the new shields and all that, will there be a kind of opportunity for the public, either as you're doing that project or as it's complete, to kind of review it and say, okay, now we've done it, you know, it's, and these lights are still way too bright, or this one's shining in my
Right.
porch, or, you know, whatever. Is there gonna be an ongoing opportunity to address, you know, people's concerns?
Well, we'd love to be able to do that. It's a little bit tricky because we pretty much, one of the reasons we're moving this forward now is to get these off the list. So basically, we don't have to purchase these 5 lights from Eversource. So it does save us, you know, some money on the front end. Plus, we don't have to set them up. So it actually saves us a fair amount of money for the 5 lights, but it's only 5 lights, so it's not the end of the world. If we wanted to say put one of these lights back up, we would have to go through purchasing that pole rights from Eversource, which is a fairly long process, but it could be done, and you know, we could get it back. So it's not the end of the world as far as that goes. As far as testing the lights, we will be setting up some lights, but we'll probably be pretty much all in on the lights that we have, unless there's really major concerns. We could swap out some lights possibly, or you know, a little bit of play, but we're pretty much committed to a Cooper lighting, and we could maybe adapt some of those fixtures a little bit, but we have a lot of shielding possibilities, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to go with Cooper, is that it allows us 2 different types of shields. It allows us a number of different options for the Kelvin ratings, and so we'll try, and I don't know, we can, once we actually own the rights, we could do a test setup or something and see what goes, but people would have to act on it fairly quickly so that we could move, because we have to purchase, you know, we'll have to purchase everything ahead. So
well,
so
I'm guessing now that we've opened this door that we will continue to get feedback about lights, so.
I'm sure we will, and they can send it all to me. Don't send it to
All
Terry.
right.
Terry's had her share. That's why I'm here.
Well, good. So I want to just open it up to any members of the public who are here tonight who would like to make a comment or have a question for Jeff. Anybody like to speak?
Jill has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble seeing the
There's a hand up from Jill Conley.
Jill, go, you've got the floor, Jill.
Well, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm delighted this is happening. I can't believe how incredibly prepared Jeff's slides are, and that we're at this threshold. It's just wonderful. I just want to tell you, we've thought about it a lot. We've talked to neighbors. We've been through this whole process, and it would be absolutely wonderful to take that light down at Water Street. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jill.
Health issue.
Are there any other comments?
I have my hand up, Andrew. Tom
Who's
Johnson.
that?
Yep.
Tom Johnson and Kate Whitaker.
Oh, Tom, I'm sorry. I got my screen very minimized, so I'm having trouble seeing people, but go right ahead, Tom.
All right. I just want to say, Jeff and the Streetlights Committee, thank you very much for all that you've done, and we're all in favor of what you are suggesting or recommending. I wish there were a few more lights that were going out along with the 5. And I just want to make a mention of the streetlight on the end of Masonic. And Jeff, that you might have a map that shows Masonic.
I don't know if I have it handy, but
You did one of your earlier.
I think
one of
it's
your
one of the
earlier
first
maps, I think,
ones,
showed it.
the first slide perhaps. Yeah.
No,
Bridge
Mm-mm.
Street.
no, that's not Masonic.
no, that's not Masonic. No.
No, second, I think
Oh,
that's the second
yeah, I
one.
know. Yeah, the
I
little.
think the last slide you had
last slide,
Masonic
yes,
on it.
I do
No,
know
not
where
the
it is.
last one.
No.
Well, at
no,
any
it's
rate,
not no, I do have it. It's here. Oh wait, where is it? Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. All right, we got it. All right, there's Masonic. Yes, we're gonna shield that from the back end too.
that's, that was my point. Yes, we find that light, the present light shines very brightly into our window way over on Bridge Street in the
Yeah,
winter time when there are no leaves on the trees.
Yeah, Tom is right
and
here. I was
so
amazed at that.
if
'cause
there
it's
will
quite
be a
distance.
shield on that light,
Yes.
we will greatly appreciate that.
It actually has a shield on the front. I think that's part of the problem. It has a shield on the front to prevent it from going into these houses that
And fair enough.
Eversource did. And I was
Yeah.
really proud of Eversource because they actually did a shield. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, but it
Yeah.
sends all the light to your house. So you have to counteract the shielding. From
That
one
was
to the
my
other.
only comment. Thanks.
That's fine, for sure. It's on my radar, so thanks.
Great. Other comments? Speak up if you have a comment, because I can't see everybody unless Jeff stops sharing.
Oh, I can stop sharing if you want. Maybe I can. Oh, there it is.
All right, now I can see everybody. Anybody else want to speak? All right, well, hearing none, we will end the discussion and move to the voting phase. Is all in favor of the motion as presented? Rick,
Aye.
Tricia,
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
So
Thanks for
thank
your
you very
work.
much, Jeff, and to all your committee and to all who really brought us to this point. It was a very instructive and engaged public process. So I think we've got we're kind of at the beginning of we're at the end of the process of the beginning process and the beginning of the implementation process. So
Sure.
good luck with the next stage, Jeff, and
Thank
keep
you.
us posted on how it goes.
Will do. And thank you for giving me a really good crew to work with, because it's like, and that goes way back. So it's like, but I really appreciate all the team that we've had. So it's been great. Thanks.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. All righty. Well, having completed the public hearing, we can now return to the ADA discussion with Mike. And thank you very much for your patience, Mike, and allowing us to complete that.
No worries. I get it. I tend to run a little bit long sometimes, so I appreciate you indulging me. We were close though. I only had 2 slides left, so
Okay.
so we can wrap those up, and then I can take any questions you guys have. Am I still able to share my screen? Let's see.
Yes.
Seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, so the last little piece, I was just finishing up on the elementary school. This is not your property, bottom line. And, you know, you guys are using this for special events, periodically for town meeting and other special, yeah, I understand use it for elections. You do have some discretion under the ADA for temporary events. What I would encourage you to do is before when you're doing your prep for town meeting, go look at the facility. Make sure that all your advertisements for your town meeting have, a notice about how to request an accommodation in a reasonable period of time, and allow yourself enough time to address those things. And based on your attendance and how many people you're expecting at these things, because you've been doing this long enough, you have a pretty good idea of how many people are coming. Make sure you have adequate parking. Make sure you've set aside a couple areas that people can drop people off to get in, and that you have a process for getting people in and out. And if you need temporary signage, you can absolutely use it. With the access to the back door and having that available to you, and having people that might need or have mobility issues to get in there, that's one of the things that a little bit of signage and a little bit of advance notice will help you overcome the issues that are already there at a facility that you have very little control over. And that goes kind of the same for really any place you're doing special events. And we've got it linked in the report. That also covers any of your facilities that are used for elections. We have a whole section in the report on how to deal with elections at facilities that lack compliance. There's actually some really good DOJ guidance on specifics that you can do for very temporary limited use around elections And that's one of those training things that we say for the clerk, okay, this needs to be part of your regular training, is making sure they're looking over that DOJ guidance, that they're doing polling place accessibility audits beforehand, and making temporary low to no cost improvements just to make polling places accessible. So that's just the real quick overview on the town programming. You'll find a lot more information in the report. We kind of do it by, we group the report by facility and then department that's within that facility, and then make some specific recommendations around programmatic modifications that we observe from that questionnaire, and then also from looking at specific issues in specific departments where they might have to look at some programmatic modifications to overcome a facility issue. So the facility audits, we only looked at 6 buildings, so it wasn't a huge report. I would encourage you all to take a look at it. I understand when we were there, they were just in the process of getting going on the Main Street improvements. I don't know where that process landed, but the conversations I'd had with Terry are a lot of the things that we had in our audit were things that were contemplated by that streetscape improvement process, but I don't remember exactly where the limits of that project were. But I think they went up to the Village Information Center and stopped just after that. They went down, they picked up the town hall ramp. So, you know, you'll want to go through those things and just, you know, check off the things that you've completed as part of that project, because I think that'll knock out a few of those. The big things we saw at town hall was obviously when we were there, the elevator was completely out of commission. So that was a big one. I don't know where that process is in terms of getting that thing fixed. But you know, that's one that absolutely needs to get addressed if it hasn't already been corrected.
I think we've spent $110,000 of ARPA money fixing that elevator.
Is it running?
It is running, and we are
Check it
doing
off.
performances up there. It's been a little bit dodgy since the fix, but we are hopeful that it will give us some more life.
Well, that auditorium is just so cool. I honestly just we spent a lot of time up there just looking at how neat it was. But there are a couple of specific things that, in our view, didn't necessarily rise to a high level of criticality in that space, and especially considering the historic nature of the building. But the pieces we did see looked like they weren't the historic pieces, you know, modifications that have been made in the past to concession area and stuff like that. Just look through the report and see how those things can be addressed in the future, or require some kind of a programmatic modification. You know, you ultimately it just depends where people are experiencing the issues. So the elevator was also not in service at Arms when we were there. I don't know if that has been corrected.
Well, I'm actually serving on the Pratt committee as the select board liaison, and we are meeting this week. The town has appropriated $50,000 at the last meeting toward the replacement of that lift, knowing it's going to cost more, and trying to nudge the Pratt committee to go out and seek some grant funding to match that town commitment. And so that's kind of where we are with that process. But if we can go to the Mass Office of Disability and apply for a grant now that we've got to this step, I think that would be great.
Let me ask this on that specifically. Where are you at with your timeline? Do you have a good estimate for what it fully takes?
You're talking about the Arms lift or the Memorial Hall Theater?
The Arms lift, the one that's
well, we've got a working lift now that is on its last legs, I'm told, and we're hoping it lasts long enough to get us through the timeline we need to replace it. We don't know exactly what that timeline will be, but that's kind of where we're operating at the moment.
All right, so just some general guidance for you. So the MOD grant process is open now. And they are, I want to say these grants are due in, don't quote me on this.
Mike, I'm pretty sure they close mid-June, so I need to look it
Mid-June?
up, but we may have missed the deadline or it's coming right up very soon.
I think they opened in mid-June, and I think I was gonna say July 15th was what I had in my head for them closing. Now they're competitive, Andrew, so if you're not ready, you're not ready, and you wait till the next round. But now that you have the accessibility plan, you'd be eligible to compete for those MOD project grants. And like I said, up to $250,000.
Well, we have a plan and we have a $50,000 commitment from the town for some earnest money. But we don't have any, architectural documents. I don't know if we need that or not, but.
Marcy's got, what do you got, Marcy?
I have the deadline as June 14th, 2024 at 5 p.m. So we have to wait until next year.
Okay.
So that's target that. Start, you guys want to be every single year, you want to be competitive for an MOD grant. And so that's your first thing that you want to put in this transition plan is you guys need to identify what's going to be our project that we're going for in July or next June and start building that path to get you there. So, but that would be a good candidate. But town hall didn't have a huge amount of issues internal to the building other than the issues in the auditorium upstairs and then the ramp and everything leading up to it. The bathrooms, I think we had some minor things that we noted in the bathrooms. And then to me, the biggest issues that you had outside of the right of way and the facility access to the Village Information Center and Town Hall, the Cal Gymnasium had some pretty significant exterior issues in terms of how you get into the building, how you access different elements on the site, like the basketball court versus the building. Those would be fairly high priority from my perspective. And I have the police station on there. There were some issues at the police station. That more is hey, this is relatively new in terms of a renovation. Why did we miss these things? So that's one of those things where you really look back at your plan review process and your post-construction inspection and try to fix the issues that allowed some of those things to get through. They weren't major, but they were minor, and they were things that really could be caught during an inspection process. Nothing that I would say rises to a barrier to access really in any regard, but just some minor code inconsistencies.
I have a question, Mike. On the MOD grant, is it possible to go after a grant that bundles several projects, like doing the stage lift and the arms library lift in one application?
Yeah, there's nothing saying you can't. And actually, there have been successful projects in the past that have been, I guess, thematic across different facilities. Like, hey, we're going to do all of our parking, striping, and signage at all of our different facilities, and that's what we want the grant for. How you bundle it is kind of up to you, and it doesn't hurt because their funding is always limited. You can always basically say in the grant, hey, we're applying for both, but we'll take one if you got it. And that gives them some flexibility to be creative with how they award.
Great, that's very helpful.
Answer your question? Okay.
Yeah,
good.
that's great.
All right. So, but look through the report and look at all the different findings on the facilities and start integrating this into your capital planning process over time. So next steps, go back to the report, pick up the report, look at the administrative requirements and the things that we have. For the most part, I think Terry has probably addressed all of these things that we had as far as making sure the public notice is up to date, making sure the grievance procedure is up to date. So anything that she's done, you need to go ahead and note, we did we got this up to date. Here's a link to it. Start updating those things in the report. And then anything you haven't done, do those things. What we have in the front end on that administrative stuff, those are all relatively low cost, minimal effort type of lifts. And we've got examples in the document and the appendices on how you can implement those. There's great templates out there. anything you guys are looking to do, and other towns already done it, so steal their idea. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the biggest thing is start integrating this plan into your other plans and into your long-term capital planning process. Start building the capacity to train people and to mandate some training internally and say, we're going to give you the time to do this. And they may have to tell you, well, that means we can't do X, Y, or Z because we're going to do this training. Support them in that. And don't look at this as an ad. This is potentially a trade-off against other things that you might have asked them to do. And that's going to be the board's role, is figuring out, okay, there's some things in here that are priorities. What are we going to shift off and let our staff have the time to do this kind of training for? But outside of that, that's it. We've got a draft report, so you're going to have to put this thing out for public comment. What we always recommend is that essentially you put this on the agenda for adoption, the report, and the plan as a select board plan. So if you have comments, if you have questions, if you have anything on there that you want to see changed, you now have that draft document. Change it, put it on your board agenda for consideration and adoption, table it, and ask for public comment. Let it sit out there for a month and then take it back up if you don't get any comment. And usually most towns that we deal with don't get any public comment on these. But if you do, note the comment in there and adopt your final version. And that's your plan. And then start working it into your other planning processes.
Thank you. That's very helpful advice, I think.
Yep. It's yours now.
Yeah. Well, just to give you a few updates, those 4 bullet points you hit at the highlights, we are actually addressing all of those. And we have a partnership with a nonprofit called the Memorial Hall Association, which leases the auditorium. They are working with the town on a 3-year capital campaign for a pretty major renovation of the hall. And so we have the stage lift identified as one of our projects, and we have an architect on board, and we've raised about 1/3 of the money so far in state, federal, and local funds. We're going after the private money now. We are hoping to go to construction sometime in the fall, possibly. And we'll see, at that point, we're going to, have to find out through our architects what code requirements are triggered by the dollars that we're spending on the renovation.
Yeah, and ask those questions. I mean, make sure you're having an honest conversation with the architect and say, listen, we need to know, are we triggering additional 521 CMR requirements by doing any of this work, or any additional requirements under the ADA? The scoping requirements of the ADA are pretty clear as far as what triggers what. If you're renovating this area and it touches this area, it has to be addressed. 521, their thresholds are a little bit different because they're pretty much all cost-based. So, a certain percentage of the work triggers full compliance. So just understand those things and ask the question. You don't have to be an expert on it, but you need to ask those architects the question, get them on record as, this is going to be compliant, and then hold them to it. They've got errors and omissions insurance for a reason.
Yep.
But,
well, I just want to give Rick and Tricia a chance to ask questions or make comments while we're on this topic. Tricia?
I guess my biggest question is, if we have the documentation of where all this stuff is happening, Mike, if we we put this out for public comment, we can include that, right? All of the stuff that we've already done that Andrew has highlighted.
100% I would. Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth it. You're making progress on these things, and there are probably things that we found that maybe we were wrong about because you already addressed them and we just didn't ask the question the right way. So I would encourage you, go through it and take credit for all the things you've done, and document them to the best of your ability, because a lot of this is, this has been a requirement since 1991. You're playing catch up to some extent, even though you had some existing, you had I think a 504 barrier assessment done way back when. You had some existing efforts on this. Take the credit for the things that you have already done because you're demonstrating a pattern of intent.
Terry, do we have that
Important.
that document being updated now? Is it on a shared drive where, as things get completed, we can cross that off, or we can show that some of these works are in progress? That way, when you win the lottery, we can still see it.
I haven't touched the document. I just thought I'd wait till after this presentation and then I would go through and check off what's been completed, what's been updated, and then I'll share it with each of you.
Yeah, I think part of what you were trying to get at, Mike, is that we should have that available publicly, like on a website or something, or
Well,
not
you
until
have to-
after.
yeah. Well, I guess to me, the most important thing is getting it in a final form and taking the public comments so that you have the completed document ready to go. And it doesn't hamper your ability to apply for grants. If that makes sense to do after Terry has had a chance to go through things, fine. If you want to do it now and then incorporate, in any case, you have to take public comment. You're really open in terms of how you do it. So it's up to you guys. I would ask Terry what works with her schedule and her workload and try to accommodate that before anything else.
Yep.
You've got to get the comment. A good way to do it is adopt the plan and just leave it tabled for a month and then close it. And any comment you get, great, you'll get comment. You're not going to get much comment. We took comment at the front end. You might get a couple people that bring something up. If it's, record the comment and note it in the document.
So I'm wondering if other members of the board, if we should adopt the plan now, give Terry time to update it, and we table it for a month or something, or till the next meeting, depending on how long, Terry, you're going to need to put the updates to it. Then we can put it out for public comment. Because I agree, the sooner that we get this finalized, that's going to open up all those grant opportunities. We should do that expeditiously, or as expeditiously as we can, given our resource constraints. So, what are your thoughts?
I guess I would say it sounds like MOD is our main grant opportunity, and we've got a year now to put that together. So I think that we can. My sense is we can go ahead and post this as a draft document for public comment, give it the month, and then, let people know that we are planning to adopt a more updated version at the end of the public comment period. I think that'll still give us plenty of time. I mean, it seems a little out of order to adopt it now and then amend it and adopt it again. I don't know. Rick,
you'd rather do it complete. You're not in a rush now that you've missed the grant deadline. So just do it in a timeline that works. You need this you need time to digest it and look through everything. And you may choose to not take a lot of the recommendations. So you just document those things and move on. But I would say Andrew's probably got the full of it is throw it out for public comment, take your time, work through it, make it part of your budget process.
Rick, any thoughts on your end about that?
I agree.
Else related to the report?
No, I found it all very interesting, especially the facilities document with all the notations of what was found at each location. I found it very interesting, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit for sure. Presentation tonight was great. I thank you for that. The process, I didn't think we needed to adopt it until I thought we needed to put it on the agenda for adoption, but table it as opposed to adopting it. Did I understand that right, Mike?
There's actually not a requirement that you simply need to have the plan. What we have found is the most effective, and especially in New England and the way the towns work, is to simply adopt it just like you would a strategic plan or any other plan. What you guys choose to do with it, as long as it exists and you keep it up to date and you follow it from a compliance standpoint, that's good. It's always good to adopt it or have a resolution supporting it or publicly acknowledge it. And
Yeah, I got that, but
So-
you would explain the process though, and you said the select board should put it on their agenda for adoption, but then table it, put it out for public comment. A
Yes.
month later, then bring it back up and adopt it at that point. Was that correct?
That is a best practice that we have seen work in other communities, is that
Okay.
general process, because it satisfies your public comment requirement.
Right. I thought I had understood it properly, and then we kind of got wound up there, like we needed to adopt it
I tend
before
to do that.
it's in its final state. Okay, so I think we've got a handle on it now.
Any other comments, Rick?
No, we'll wait till Terry can do it. Obviously, no rush, and when it's ready, get it on the agenda so that we can then put it out to public comment. And I would think the website would make sense as far as a place to put it for people to view.
Great. And Tricia, are you comfortable with the processes that Mike has outlined, or do you want to still make a motion to adopt it now?
I guess I'm still not clear. It sounds like if we adopt it, we can still say we're working on it, we're tabling it, we're going to put it out for public comment once Terry has a chance to do it. Then we put it out for public comment, and then we make a decision to accept it. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
No, see, that's where I'm a little
I think
confused
that- I
about
think
it, so
that
I'll
what
defer
Mike
to you
is-
guys.
I think Mike is proposing that we do what you just said at our next meeting, is put it on the agenda to consider for adoption, and then table it and give it a month, and then bring it back.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with
Okay.
that?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I
Great.
probably confused that more than I needed to, but Andrew just boiled it down to like a sentence and a half. So thank you, Andrew.
All right.
That's good. Well, I'm new, so that's also part of my learning curve. That's like straight up.
No problem. No problem. I think we're all in a general agreement. Terry, do you have anything you want to add to the mix here?
Nothing. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we're there, Mike. And I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us that we really appreciate your both the work you did and your team to put this together, and the overtime effort in coming back from Westford to bring us over the finish line. So thank you very much.
I wanted to come back and see Andrew. I've missed all of our public safety committee meetings. So. But always good to come back.
I hope things are going well in Westford. That sounds like a nice next step.
Yeah, no, it's working out well. And if you guys have any questions on this, I think Marcy's already transmitted all of the final documents. So you guys should have everything you need and be basically ready to go with this.
Great.
But you can always reach back out to her with any questions.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
All right, we'll be seeing y'all around, and Terry, I'm sure I'll see you at some type of new government official meeting, or hopefully pretty
Yes.
assuming you don't win the lottery.
All righty.
Take care, guys.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we are in for a long meeting here. We are at old business, pocket park use and rules for consideration. Let's see, Rick, you were the one who drafted those rules. Do you want to start us off on this conversation?
Well, I did present them previously. Very briefly, the intent is to try to get a handle on what we already see as the potential of a nightmare for someone. We've got a letter of complaint. We've got 3 pending requests for use. The minute the snow fence came down, everybody wanted to start having performances there, which was not the original intent of the park. So I had developed some rules.
Hang on, Rick. Terry, can you give me screen sharing? Because I wanted to put this on the screen for those who were wondering about this.
Andrew, I don't have the capability to screen share in my home. I don't.
Oh, okay, because it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Well, that was meaning that I disabled Mike Edwards' screen sharing.
Oh, okay,
But
forget
I
it then.
can't
That's okay.
personally.
It's not that important. I'm sorry, Rick. Keep going.
No problem. So on top of that one issue, it became immediately obvious as I talked to surrounding towns and looked at how they regulate the use of their parks with some very elementary, basic things that you'd almost think you wouldn't even need to say, but you can't enforce if you don't have them in play. And I didn't want to make some big can't do this, can't do that kind of thing, but it does behoove us to be brief if we make a posting about rules that we can then enforce. So I came up with the idea of a small placard to be posted and to have it listed on our website of the do's and don'ts. Very simple 6-item suggestion. One from you, Andrew, I had totally missed, but I actually witnessed that you suggested we add dogs, no walking dogs on it. Sure enough, the next day I go up there and there's somebody with a dog out there doing its business and they didn't have any bags to take it away. So, I mean, it's just stuff like that. So the 6 that I had, real brief, actually, the sign that I suggested and the rule that I suggested was just this very simply. This park and pavilion are for the casual use of the general public. Enjoy an ice cream, a sandwich, a coffee, or just a relaxing pause. Please do not litter and be respectful of others sharing this public space, courtesy of the town of Shelburne. The 6 items were no grills or cooking allowed, no smoking, vaping, or alcohol allowed, no moving of picnic tables allowed, no dogs allowed except service dogs, no canopy or tents allowed, no signs, postings, or flyers allowed, and no scheduled use of the facility allowed. That latter one, as a result of the immediate floodgates opening, which will just definitely continue to build and is a concern of mine. And I would qualify that last one to exceptions may be allowed by a vote of the select board for its reserved use during town-wide community events. So I had presented this at a previous meeting and suggested a moratorium on the use of it until we were able to come up with some rules with a full board. Andrew, you would not second that motion, so it kind of sat. We do now have a 3rd member. At last meeting 2 weeks ago, I represented this and asked that you folks agreed to review and come to this meeting prepared with your thoughts on it, whether you supported any of it, which ones you like, which ones you don't like, and which ones you might want to add to start a conversation to do the right thing and put some general overview conditions on the use of the pavilion.
Great. Tricia, your thoughts?
I agree that there has to be some kind of parameters set for the use of the park, as we're seeing now. A lot of people want to use it, and then other people are saying, but how come they get to use it? And I just want to sit there and have my coffee, for example. So I think, however, and I appreciate the work that you put forward with the 7 rules, Rick. Actually, you had 2 number 4s.
Oh, I do. That's Andrew. Andrew's addition threw me off.
There.
There you go. But
I went odd numbers.
I still always remember going to Martha's Vineyard, and I've never returned because they had so many signs that said no skateboarding, loitering. It was just like this long list of don't do this, and I felt unwelcome. And we have a town that's generally very welcome to our tourists and other people. And I think we want to just keep the tone of that more lighthearted while still being stern. So having everything start with no and end with allowed made me feel more like I was in Martha's Vineyard and less like I was in Shelburne. So if we could come to different types of phrasing for those, I looked a few up online. Going over this, it was a little bit hard because some were really wacky, but some were kind of funny. Like, think about what your grandma would let you do. You know, don't start a fire here. Or we can, there's no poop fairy, for example. That was one sign they used in the city of Chicago where it had, they put that on one of those stations that have the dog excrement bags and a trash can. I think that would be a great installation in that area so that people who forget their poop bags or don't bother bringing them with them anyway, have a way to dispose of their dog's waste and not just leave it there in the public park, because that's really gross. So if we can look at a way of handling that and using different phrasing, you know, keep the tables where they are. Don't put up a tent. You know, please refrain from doing X or something like that. If we could work on phrasing that's a little friendlier, but also gets across, we're not messing with you. If you break these rules, we're going to be really unhappy. That's what I think. I want to keep us a happy, friendly place for people.
I wish you would have come with a list of those reworded, because I have no objection to that. The general public can be something, and short and sweet usually is much better. No grills or cooking. Okay, take off the word allowed. What would you suggest for that? Please don't cook here. Please don't.
Another way you could approach that, Rick, if you wanted to remove all of the negative language, is to just begin the list with the phrase, you know, prohibited activities, : and then you could drop the no and the allowed.
Okay. My goal was to
Anyway,
keep.
that's
to
just
keep
an
the
idea.
sign- Right, I like it. My goal was to keep this not some huge big sign with a whole bunch of words, to be able to keep the words condensed. And you could actually, that idea would even condense it further than I have it. So prohibited activities takes all those no's off. I love it.
Takes all the allows off too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about that,
Yeah.
Tricia?
I think that's okay. I'd like to, if we could put, what do you guys think about getting you know, one of those devices that has the trash can and the doggy bags that just say, you know,
I'm strongly
your
in favor
pet.
of that, Tricia, and that, to me, that brings up my sort of general issue with the 7 commandments, which is, you know, some of these are more enforceable than others, you know, and I think it's important to say them so that you can position yourself to enforce them if you can, or if you want to, or if you're requested to. But, you know, I think when I look at this list, you know, if somebody sets up a grill and starts, you know, burning charcoal, this sign would let them know that they're probably going to get a visit from a cruiser in the not too distant future. And this, if they put up a tent and start camping out, same thing. You know, the other things, you know, smoking and vaping, maybe, but, you know, that's a little harder to figure out what's in somebody's paper bag, you know. And you know, the no dogs allowed, while I would fondly wish that that was enforceable, I am almost 100% convinced it is not. You know, even after a sign is put up, people are going to be bringing their dogs there, and sadly, they're going to be letting them poop there too. And I'm just very disappointed in my neighbors about that practice. But I agree with Tricia that having the the little pole with the bags on it and the trash can is probably the best we can do in that regard. The moving of the picnic tables, some people seem Rick, you seem worried about that. I'm not worried about that. If people come in and move the picnic tables and put them back when they're done, that's not a big deal to me. But, so saying,
Why would anyone need to move them, Andrew?
well, I was just watching the folks who were playing their Celtic Jam last night on Sunday night, and they moved one of the tables so they could have more of a circle under the bench, and they put it back again.
But you're trying to facilitate the use of the pavilion for entertainment for friends of yours that I know you like and appreciate and you attend. That's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I do not like their attitude. I do not like that they went up to the tech school people and said, geez, I sure hope this is done by the end of the week because we got a performance book. And then we get a letter to our board for another group that wants to use it. And they say in their letter, this one will come up later in our meeting. This is for, we will be done by 4 p.m. so that the jam band can do their regular event. What regular event? We haven't authorized a regular event. The floodgates have started. I tried to ask for a moratorium on allowing performances at this pavilion until we had a rule or a way to enforce or a process to avoid more complaint letters that we've got and more request letters. We've got a request letter before us tonight after seeing and understanding that this other group supposedly has permission to use this at 4 o'clock every Sunday, which I don't believe. Saying, well, we'd like to use it for climate change campaign and use it to register people. And there's so many people that are going to want to take this over that it doesn't behoove us to fail to plan. I think that it's prudent to have an ounce of prevention rather than, a pound of cure. And until such time as we're prepared to say, okay, we're getting all these people, all these different groups, and we have 4 of them tonight, asking to use it, how are we going to do it? Are we going to vote at every meeting, those that come before us, whether we're going to allow it? We don't have any rules of how to use it. It's an attractive nuisance potential at the moment. And I would like to see it regulated. I'm not saying we shouldn't allow some of these things to be used this way. We should have some standards and procedures of how to use it. It was originally presented to the people who pay their taxes in this town as a free public picnic area for this pavilion. And all of a sudden, it's become the attractive entertainment place. In fact, I had a shopkeeper stop me on the street and ask me, after the snow fence went down, said, well, when's the stage going up in the performance area? And I said, there's no stage going up, there's picnic tables going in there. So this whole misconception that pavilion is public use for whatever cause or event they may want without any authorization concerns me greatly, obviously. And
well, Rick, let me just offer a few thoughts on that regard.
Shoot.
One is, I have to say, I was amused that all of the people, both requesting to use the park and complaining about it, live in the town of Buckland. And that was just a matter of amusement on my part, given that they're developing their own spaces over there. But yeah. I don't have any objection to people from Buckland coming across the river either to complain or to sit in the park, but that's just an observation on my part. The other issues that go more to the substance of whether and how to regulate, activities like, impersonating Walt Whitman or having a Celtic jam on a Sunday afternoon. To me, those are actually meeting the first sentence of your rule book, which is the park and pavilion are for the casual use of the general public. They're members of the general public who are sitting down and playing music. And that to me is part of the casual use. If they want to stand up and declaim Whitman poems, that stuff happens in public parks. The real question is, do they need to schedule that use, or should they? And the one proponent who actually lives in Shelburne and meets the criterion of your asterisk at the bottom is Paul Bennett, who's organizing the Porch Festival, which is a townwide community event.
I think we should absolutely allow that. He's asked permission. It should come up on our agenda tonight, and I think we should absolutely approve it.
But I'm just saying that if we wanted to just go with what you've got here, the other two proponents who are, even though they have irritated you to no end, they're just members of the public doing stuff in the park, and if Marion Kelsey is irritated by that and wants to sit down in the middle of that Celtic jam and eat her sandwich, she's a member of the public too, and she can do that, and they can play around her, but they're all members of the public using the park.
How may I ask one question? You talked about my comment of the casual use. How is it casual use when a group goes and moves the table, blocks off all the other tables, declares that from 4 to 6 every Sunday is their time under that thing? How is that casual use? That's a scheduled, publicized, organized use of town property. Why do they get the right to hone out these 2-hour blocks every Sunday afternoon without? And as you pointed out, they're from Buckland.
Right, but according to this policy, if we were to adopt what you've written, they would not have a scheduled privilege to use that park on that time, but they could still show up and do that. And if somebody else happened to have gotten there first and wanted to, get their 50 friends to sit in all the picnic bench seats and effectively prevent them from doing that, well, they could do that. That's public parks are public spaces. So unless we say everybody's got to go through a process and apply to Terry to schedule their Whitman poem or their Celtic jam or whatever it is they want to do, and you might actually run into some constitutional issues there. I don't know, but maybe we could do that if we wanted to have a completely sort of scheduled and regulated way of using the park. I'm personally okay to let it unspool for a little while and see, how it plays out, and then decide what kind of regulation makes sense and that we can actually do. So before we start making rules, we should sort of give it a chance to breathe and say, is this a problem or not?
I predicted that it would be, and in my opinion, it already is, based on the snow fence has been down less than 2 weeks, and we have 3 different things before us this evening asking permission to use it. Well, so what are we going to do?
Well, we could either do what you've described, which is to say you don't need permission, except if you want to have a what the thing in the asterisk, which is a townwide community event. So if it's not a townwide community event, you just want to sit in the park and do something, you're just a member of the public using it casually, and you don't have any right to schedule it. But you can go there, and if it's available, you can do what you want.
Tricia, what do you think?
Well, I see both sides here, and I do agree that a public park is a public park. And I myself have gone and sat in a pavilion place to keep it for an event that was going to happen later because they didn't allow for reservations. This was in another city. So I can see that side of the point. I can also see the side of, well, geez, I'd like to have a place to go on Sunday afternoon, but I know the Celtic band is going to be there at 4. They've sort of basically appropriated the space. And if people now are unwilling to use it because they're there, that's not really fulfilling our obligation of allowing the park to be open for everyone else. Now, if I've seen the Celtic people in other locations, the band, and I really enjoyed listening to them. I don't know how they're treating people who want to use the pavilion. If they're not being, allowing everybody to just hang out or saying, hey, this is our space, maybe we need to have a conversation with them about how they're treating other people. The thing with public spaces is it allows people of all different walks of life to interact with each other. And that's the beauty of a public space, right? We need to have places and spaces where people can mingle, share ideas, learn something new about another human. And that actually is what makes our communities more resilient. So in the long run, I love parks. I love libraries. I like any place where people can hang out and learn something new. What I don't like about this particular situation with the band is that they've sort of decided it's theirs, although they did come and ask to use it on Sundays. I think maybe we say, we're going to try this. You can have it the first Sunday of the month, because they were performing elsewhere before. Excuse me. And maybe we just say, okay, you've asked permission to do this. It is sort of a slippery slope. I think maybe what we need are more venues, more public venues, more parks, more places for people to hang out and do this. Then we wouldn't have to argue about who gets to be in this one place at this one time. I mean, what other venues do we have? We have Memorial Hall. We've got the band shell. How does that work with the school? Can people just walk up there and use it?
I guess I would say, Tricia, that, and this is in response to the woman from Buckland who felt like she didn't have a place to sit down in the village because these Celtic ruffians were taking up all the space in the park, that there are a lot of places to sit down on Bridge Street. And we worked hard to put benches in all up and down Bridge Street. And there are now places to sit on the Buckland side in her very own town. Right by the end of the Bridge of Flowers, they have a whole new picnic area that the Buckland town board created there next to town hall. They've got a new pocket park that they're working on. There are places all over town to sit down, and there are venues all over town for people to do music. So if Steve Howland's band shows up on a Sunday afternoon and there are a bunch of angry Bucklanders who want to sit in the park and prevent him from playing, he can advise his people to say, well, we're going to go across the river and play in front of the Bridge of Flowers on the Buckland side today, or we're going to go down to Malley Park, or we're going to go up to the Baptist Green or the band shell. I just named half a dozen places you could go have a jam if you wanted to do that on an outdoor. So to me, unless we're saying we want to schedule everything, let's just let them work it out and see what happens,
I think that's a foolhardy
Well, I'm
inadequate.
just following what you've written down here, Rick. That's how it would work if we published this document as you've written it.
All
I
we're
mean,
saying,
we have a big problem that the town council, if I'm not mistaken, had said, we can't sublet this. And if we lease it or rent it out to somebody, technically that makes us subletting, right? And so then she's advised us against doing that.
Right. We can still
And we can't
schedule
really
using
have a
it.
process. If we have a process in place, that's taking up some of Terry's time that she's not going to be, assuming Terry is going to be the one to have to process all this paperwork, bring it to the board, we have to make a decision, and then it has to get back to someone. This is time that's being taken out of her day that she's basically not going to get compensated for. So if there's something like this in the works, probably there should be a fee attached, an application fee. And I don't really want to go down that avenue either.
I don't think anyone does, Trish. And, you know, that's why I just suggested no scheduled use of the facility unless it's a townwide event approved by the select board. That solves all these controversies of multiple groups nipping at each other, trying to vie for space. But to correct one thing you said, that group did not come and ask for permission to use the park. They came and stated that they are entitled to use the park because they already had spoken to Andrew and got his nod. And the actual owners of the property had previously allowed them, so they felt they were entitled and owned the right to that time. They didn't ask us for a vote. They didn't ask us for permission. They just made a statement, and that's what started this whole thing, to say, wait a minute, we need to not allow people to claim it as their own without some supervision. And I'm not suggesting that we charge a fee. I'm not suggesting that we do anything that adds work to the town administrator. I'm suggesting that we say no organized use unless it's a townwide event, and you'll need permission from the select board to do it.
So
it just makes it easy.
To give you a little bit of context on what Rick has laid out here between, you know, townwide events and non-scheduled use, is we have at least 3 community townwide events that I can think of that are organized by people in Shelburne that will be requesting a reserved use of this park. One is Moonlight Magic. Another is the road race. And the third might be this porch festival. And, you know, if we had a business association, which I used to run, we had things like the Taste of Shelburne Falls that might use this park if it had existed back then. You know, those are the kind of things that could come before the board and request a reservation. But I'm kind of in agreement with Rick that, to me, no scheduled use means these various people who have written to us and are using the park can continue to do so if it's available. And if other people are sitting there and eating ice cream, then they can go somewhere else and declaim their poetry or play their music or whatever, you know. But to me, those are all just casual users using the park as it's available.
As you just described it, I couldn't agree with you more, Andrew.
So I'm willing to let that unfold and see how it works. And if it turns out that all those people wind up getting into big conflicts with each other and we need to do more scheduling, we can revisit it and see how to do that. But for now, I just like to see people use the park and see how it goes. But and I totally agree with you, Trish, about the dog mess cleanup business, that we have to put, you know, those little bags out there and try to change the culture on that, because you know, I'm deeply offended by people who disrespect their neighbors in that fashion.
So listen, we're never going to get anywhere on this unless we get to it. I would like to make a motion that we adopt the 7 rules that I suggested with the rephrasing to prohibit the following activities, get rid of the no's and get rid of the allowed, but include the 7th of scheduled use of the facilities except townwide events. You seem to support that in what you just said, Andrew. And I would like to make that motion and get it on record as to who supports it and who doesn't.
There's been a motion made. Do you want to second that, Tricia?
I'm thinking, I'm just wondering about the no dogs allowed thing. I don't know that we need to do that if we're going to say curb your pet. Terry, I think you had something to say about that earlier.
I just wonder if we allow dogs and there's a bite on town property, how liable the town is. If a dog's off a leash, 2 dogs start fighting, someone gets bit. It's far-fetched, but it happens. We have a lot of dog versus people.
Actually, not that
incidences.
far-fetched. I think that's a very foreseeable possibility.
Yeah. It just always surprises me how free people are with their dogs downtown. If you look in the tree wells, there's dog feces. It is a very unattractive nuisance for a touristy town.
So, okay.
I mean, to me, that's like the smoking and drinking thing is probably low on our ability to enforce. But I think by saying it, it gives us the possibility of enforcing it. And it, as Terry said, it addresses, I think, a liability issue.
I think it also brings peer pressure. If I'm sitting at a table with my wife and 2 of the grandkids and we're having an ice cream and somebody comes over and lights up a stogie, all I'm going to do is point to the sign and say, you know, sir, there's no smoking here, or ma'am, there's no smoking here. It's posted. I don't think that's crazy. I can't find one park, as I said before last meeting, in any surrounding town here that doesn't have rules. And I cut it down to bare bones, didn't get into all the craziness that a lot of the other towns did. So I've made a motion. I'm asking for a second so that we can put it to a vote.
Do we have to, I just want to be clear if we're going to have to accept all 7, because I still have a question about the picnic tables being
I
moved.
think if we move it and then second it, we can discuss it and vote to amend it if people want to amend it.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. We're now at discussion. And go ahead, Tricia.
Oh, well, first I want to thank you, Rick, for coming up with this list. And I do appreciate that you investigated it for every in other places. And I think I can't actually think of anything else. But I do, other than what we've talked about with curbing the dogs, and which raises the question, if no dogs are allowed, do we need to have a curb your dog place? Maybe that's a subject for another day, that we should put them around town if we can. And I think with the rephrasing, I like the rules as they are. I agree we should just let's just see what happens with the scheduled use.
I agree.
I would like to just vote to amend that we remove the moving of the picnic tables. I think that to me it doesn't rise to the same level as the other things that are listed here.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay. Rick, any discussion on that?
No, I did put it in because when we were first approached and told what they were going to do with that on Sundays, the first thing they said was, we're going to move picnic tables, we're going to nail up a sunscreen. You're right, they started off on the total wrong foot with their attitude with me. But then when I went and looked at other town rules, they all say, no moving the picnic tables. And I said, well, okay, makes total sense. If you two have a problem with that, I'm good with striking it.
I think if we have it, like if you move it, put it back.
Right. Well, you can say that if you want, but I don't know. I would just vote to remove it for now. And if that becomes a huge issue, we can add it back in and make it the 7th commandment, you know, and we might have 8 or 9 commandments at that point. But
I have no problem, as I said, I have no problem removing that item and going back to 6 from 7.
All right. So, and Tricia, I would just say, again, because it goes back to my sense of what is actually enforceable and what is just sort of, as Rick is saying, is kind of setting the tone and creating the possibility of enforcement. You know, the no dogs allowed is setting a threshold. And I think we should put the bags up there because people are going to use the park. It's just one of those things, you know. And personally, you know, to me, it's sad because I think, you know, for the respectful citizens who pick up after their dogs, it'd be nice if they could just sit in the park with their dog and, you know, pick up if needed. But the reality is there are too many disrespectful citizens out there who don't give a damn about their neighbors and don't pick up after their animals, you know. So I think we need to do both, personally.
So you're suggesting you remove the no dogs allowed?
No, we keep the no dogs allowed and we put up a little, you know,
Curb your pet.
Maybe
station.
maybe somewhere in town away from the park, because that kind of sends a mixed message.
It is a mixed message. I don't know how to deal with it. It's going to happen, and we want people to pick up, you know.
Can we put
'Cause
it
if
on
we-
the edge of the park? I mean, we could put, I think if we had several locations, if we really thought about it, we should make this a separate agenda issue for another meeting. Where should we put these curb your pet signs and stations? And we could put one on the edge of the park, not actually in the park, because I agree, it does send a mixed message and we'll end up on, you know, like
Right.
Bill Maher or
actually-
something like that. Look what this stupid little town did. It
Right.
says no dogs allowed, and then there's a curb your pet.
Cognitive dissonance.
Right, exactly. So
We actually have water fountains for dogs on Bridge Street.
Right. All right.
Well, we should put
I like
those
that
near
approach,
there.
Tricia. We'll bring that up separately, but it sounds like we're in agreement of the 6 commandments for now. And
yes, without the picnic tables.
yeah.
Yep.
So is there any further discussion on this one?
I guess I have one question. So I think we're in agreement of this, but we need to see revised language, right? Or are we just gonna take off the
We're
no?
taking
Well, I
off
think
be
Rick
allowed?
is proposing prohibited activities : and take off the no and the allowed.
Correct.
And we're gonna keep the introduction there, like this park and pavilion are for the casual use, right? Because I
I'm okay
like
with
that.
that.
That's kind of
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I
And
like
that's
it.
welcoming and friendly, and I really liked it.
Thank you.
Even if, and this is from someone who's lactose intolerant and never has ice cream in the park.
All right. Well, is there I guess we're gonna then vote on the motion as amended and with the language changes that Rick has proposed. All in favor, Rick,
Aye.
Tricia,
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries. All right. Thank you,
Thank
Rick,
you,
for bringing
you,
that
Rick.
forward.
I appreciate it. I think it's the right thing.
I'm sorry, I gotta get back. Oh no, where'd my agenda go? Oh, here we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm using my mouseless computer here. Okay, so we're on to letter to DPW regarding intent to purchase streetlights. Terry.
Harry, no, this is Jeff Bettner.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
this is
sorry,
their
Jeff, you're
letter.
still here. Okay.
I'm still here.
So do
We
you
have
need
the
a
letter.
motion from us about this?
That's a good question. We're not sure yet. I think it's really just to give you a heads up. I mean, John Walsh and I will start working on the paperwork tomorrow and look at what we need, and then we can just come back to you guys and you'll have to sign off on it before we send. I mean, I think it officially has to come from you or Terry or something to go to Eversource, but we can draft it and everything for you. So.
Oh, okay. So you're just giving us a heads up.
Yeah, we're just basically saying we're going to be doing this, and I think that's all we
Okay.
really need to do at this point. And unless Terry
right.
knows of a special form, there's a form that was in the 32-page document that Eversource gave us, so we'll dig that out and start reading it now that we're there. So, but yeah, and then I think it'll be fairly straightforward. We have a meeting on Friday too for the Streetlight Committee, so we'll try and hash out stuff between now and then.
Okay.
So
Well,
would we
thank you.
need-
It seems like you've got what you need in terms of the 5 lights and can move
Yeah.
forward on
Yeah.
the plan and the proposal.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape, and
Great.
we're well within budget, so we're doing good. So
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, we're on to West County Senior Service District regarding the fiscal officer. Is there anybody here to speak to that issue? I think where we left it is we were advising our 2 Shelburne reps to talk with Angel about her perspective on Shelburne providing those fiscal services to the new district. Has there been, Terry, do you know anything about that in terms of where that whole conversation stands?
I know that Angel spoke with Rick. And I know I spoke with Trish about all that would be involved if Shelburne did become a fiscal agent to the district. We would be servicing a very separate district, separate books, separate software, separate bank accounts, separate audit. And it just seems like a lot. It almost seems like it would be cleaner if the new district sought out an independent fiscal officer, but I'll let Rick and Trish speak to that as well.
Andrew?
Go ahead.
Yes, I did speak with Angel about this, and we communicated. If taken on by the town, in addition to the expense of all the new accounting software, the new procedure, it would not fall under the current pay schedule for Angel. She made it clear that this would be basically another element that would need a wage for. I felt that this is something that was natural for them to ask us for, but nothing that I thought that the town should take on. And Angel said she had no problem with that. Terry indicated the same, and the people were going to contact Angel, and Angel's plan was to tell them that it would be best if they looked to an outside vendor because Buckland doesn't want it. It's a big apple to bite, and I think they need to take care of it themselves with an outside vendor that's already plugged into doing this kind of stuff. So I think we do need to give them an answer that we either are or aren't interested in taking this on. And I don't think it's something the town should take on.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just the argument, and that's the reason I asked the question at the last meeting was, so what's the advantage of having Shelburne do it? And basically it was only that they already had a relationship with the people in Shelburne. It's a whole new entire set of books. And right there, I just thought, no, this is just, they just need somebody to do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be Shelburne, and it's a whole new type of thing anyway. They might as well just get a separate vendor, because it's not sustainable asking Angel to do all of this in addition to what her actual job is for the town. To do this other job that's really for a bunch of towns doesn't seem right, just because the senior center is located in Shelburne today, right? It could be moved to a different town at a future date, and then so are they going to ask them I think in terms of a long-term sustainability perspective, it would be much better to just hire a third party vendor that specializes in this type of thing, and they put that in their budget and take care of it. It's way more than what Shelburne needs to do with our limited resources that we have, and we don't want to burn Angel out.
So
I
do we
hear-
need,
I hear you both sounding a note of general agreement with each other about how to proceed with this. I have a couple of questions for Terry about the process. One is that it strikes me that because this is a separate governmental body, that even if we were friendly to this idea, Angel would be basically being requested to provide those services as a contractor. And I'm not sure that that's even a town of Shelburne decision. She could just go moonlight and do that, couldn't she?
She probably could, but I'm sure that they would want her services during daytime hours, where she'd be doing payroll at the same time that we're doing payroll. She'd have to have her own computer. They're going to have their own personnel policies that mirror the FERCOGs. So she'd have to continually flip between, am I doing town benefits or FERCOG benefits? I don't think she's 100% on board. And if she is, they can approach her outside of this, but it would have to be on her own time, her own computer, her own printers.
Right. So that's
and
kind of
then-
where I would leave it in Angel's court to say, if you want to do this as an independent contractor, that's your decision, and you put together the facilities and resources that you would need to do that job, if that's something you want to do. I get the sense she's not that keen on doing it, which leads to my other question, which is, if we say no and Angel says no, then do we need to then review her job description and ask the question, how much time was she spending managing the Shelburne Senior Center as their fiscal agent, under our current arrangement? And if that's going away, we need to then revisit her job description and the number of hours she's working for the town of Shelburne. Am I right about that, Terry?
I think that the impact of the benefited senior center employees is minimal. Dara plays a much larger role as the accountant than Angel does, my guess would be, as the treasurer. But as someone who oversees the overall operations at Town Hall, I would prefer that Angel focus on her duties for the town, tax collections, benefit administration, and not take on yet another entity, because she's already working for the Shelburne Fire District. She's working as the assistant treasurer for the retirement board. I'd just like her to focus on the job that we've hired her to do. for the
Right.
town.
No, I mean, I don't know how many hours Angel's got to work with here, but from my perspective, that's more her decision than ours. And I would say I would agree with Rick and Tricia that we can say that we don't want Angel as a Shelburne employee to take on this role, and that's kind of within our purview to say. So I'd entertain a motion that we should say that, but in terms of whether she decides to work for them as a private contractor, that's kind of her business, from my perspective.
I would move that we don't want the town of Shelburne to act as the fiscal agent for the new senior center services board. What is it called again?
The
official
West
name?
County Senior Services District.
Thank you. The West County Senior Services District. With the explicit language like that, because we're not saying we don't want Angel doing it. We just don't want the town of Shelburne to be the fiscal agent, which is the question that was proposed to us.
I agree with the way you worded it, and I will second that motion.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, Tricia?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries. So we're on to new business. We've talked about the band shell. Item B is Paul Bennett requesting to use the pavilion for the Shelburne Falls Porch Music Festival, which I believe is on July 14th.
Yes.
Your thoughts? Rick?
I think it's been well received. It's, what is it? I don't know if they said it's in its second, third, fourth year. I don't know how many years it's been doing, but it's been well received. I think it's right in character for the village, and they're looking to use the pavilion for a period of time with rotating performers, which kind of draws that porch, Water Street, side streets down into the main downtown area more so. No amplification. I would support this request.
Great. Tricia?
Yes, it follows the townwide event criterion, so I would support it as well.
Great. And I would just say, by way of full disclosure, that Paul is my daughter's partner, so I will abstain from this question. And that I've also been drafted into offering my porch for one of the performances. So we'll be having Wild Bill and his country swing band playing once again for a repeat performance on our porch. And the benefit of Wild Bill, I have to say, is a nice little footnote is that is Bill Niddle, who is the principal at Rowe Elementary, and through my porch festivaling with him, I got him to become one of our projectionists at Pothole Pictures. So
Oh, cool.
there's all kinds of connections being made here.
Social ties.
That's right.
Good deal.
Well, if there's no further discussion, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor, Rick?
Aye.
Tricia?
Aye.
And Andrew abstains, and the motion carries. We've got Stephen Fink regarding a July 4th parade request. Tricia, your thoughts on that?
I think 4th of July parades are awesome and we should approve it.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve this request by Mr.
Second.
Fink.
There's been made and seconded. Any discussion, Rick?
No, they did a great job last year. I'm sure they will again.
All right, well, so hearing no further discussion, we'll bring to a vote. All in favor, Tricia?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and we have another parade in the offing here. So we've got annual appointments of boards, committees, and election workers. Have you all had a chance to review that list?
Yes.
I have.
And one question I have, Terry, is all those folks who are marked as 2024, are they proposing to continue or not?
Yes, they are. Unless it's noted, they are proposing to continue. But what
Okay.
typically happens after appointments are made, they receive an appointment letter. They can accept or reject at that time.
Okay. So we are now voting on the yellow 2024s, is that correct?
No, the first page are all one-year terms for committees. And the only individual on the first page is Tom Johnson has requested not to be reappointed as an Energy Committee member for the coming year.
So maybe the most efficient way to do this would be to take the first page of one-year appointments and ask for a motion to accept with the exception of Tom Johnson. Is that right?
Yes, I have one other caveat. Under Memorial Day Committee, Joe Judd had asked that the board appoint David Carney and said he resides in Coleraine, but feels that he would be of great benefit to that committee. So I just wanted to make that disclosure.
Okay. Is there any a restriction on us accepting Coleraineites into our Memorial Day committee?
I think it's entirely up to the board. It's generally not a practice we've used in the past. If they have property owners or family ties, they make exceptions. I think the Pratt Memorial Committee has, or used to have, people from surrounding towns, not necessarily Buckland and Shelburne, but they're independent of the town, so.
Okay.
Andrew,
Would one of you like to move this first page of one-year appointments with those two caveats, Rick?
actually I have one more, just an observation. Conway at their town meeting had a bylaw for allowing non-residents to be on town committees, and it was rejected. The town of Shelburne's never done it either. So are we opening a door of precedence if we leave David Carney from Coleraine on this committee? Nice fella, don't have a problem with him. I'm just asking a question if that's a concern. My other point, and we can address the first after, is Mark Shippey's listed. Should we change that to Jeff Johnston?
Yes, but I didn't have that information until last week, so.
Okay, so that
All
would be
right, so
enough.
we've got at least 3 caveats and a question.
And I have a question too.
Go ahead. Tricia.
So I was just curious about the Emergency Management Committee, Rick, and I don't know if this is something you wanted to continue doing, or is that your liaison role? Because if that was something, I believe that was a thing that Bob did, and I actually have experience with emergency management and stuff. So if you wanted to trade.
I didn't want to trade. I wanted you to take it. I'm sorry. I have my own notes, and I looked right by that one because we were on to 3 different subjects. But yes, I think you should definitely be the Select Board's representative to the Emergency Management Committee. And I'm so sorry, I missed my own note on that.
That's okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Actually,
Okay.
Rick, I'm just curious, if you're a non-voting member, do we actually even vote to appoint you? Or is this just on here just to advise us that you're there in an advisory capacity?
I believe
as a
that's the
select
function.
board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as the select board person, you don't vote on any emergency management committee items, but you're there just to listen and provide feedback.
I believe there was a vote taken to have me appointed to it, so.
Right. But it seems like, just from a process point of view, that doesn't this fall more in the bucket of reorganization and liaison roles and all that kind of stuff?
Well, liaison is to departments, and so that word's kind of loose in this case.
Yeah, but that's in effect what you've been doing, right?
Right. The select board can name their member because the select board has a seat, just non-voting.
Oh, okay.
And so we have to choose and select a person from our board to serve in that role. And that happens in other groups as well.
So it sounds like you and Trish are in agreement that you're swapping out here and putting her in.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have 4 caveats then.
Okay.
Oh, we haven't talked about Coleraine yet. And it sounds like, just to go back to your comment about Conway, that they've voted on that question and rejected the idea. It sounds like we have never really said yay or nay to it, right?
I think we should hold on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, our current status bylaw wise is we don't have a prohibition or a welcome, right?
Correct.
That's my understanding.
Okay. But Terry, you're saying we should hold off for now?
I guess I would like to talk to both the town clerk and maybe town council just to see if it's appropriate to. I mean, it's not like it's a huge decision-making body, but I do think we're setting a precedent. I've not received an official letter requesting to appoint him. I was just asked by Joe Judd to put
I
him
see.
on the list.
So
Um,
then we're back to 3 caveats, and we could just sort of, as Terry's recommending, bring this up at a next meeting once we have a little more information. Is that acceptable to you two?
Yes.
Rick?
I mean, I think also David Carney can go and provide feedback. He doesn't have to be an official member, right? On the committee.
I guess. I mean, I think that can be part of Terry's conversation with Joe and with our attorney, just to sort of see what makes the most sense in terms of how he might participate, you know.
So you ready for a motion?
Yeah, Rick, are you okay with letting that one go until Terry researches it?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will move that we accept the one-year terms as listed, with the exception of Mark Shippey being replaced by Jeff Johnston on the Emergency Management Committee, with Tricia replacing me as the Select Board representative, removing Tom Johnson from the list from the Energy Committee, leaving a spot open, a vacancy open there, and postponing a decision on the David Carney for Memorial Day Committee.
Is there a
I
second?
second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? And hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, Tricia,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries. And we're on to the next page, which are the 3-year terms with the 2024 positions highlighted in yellow.
That's a
and
page and a half.
We've actually got 2 pages worth of that. And we've got Joe Palmieri highlighted as an alternate. And Terry, does Joe need to be reappointed as a 5-year alternate?
It's not a 5-year, it would be a 1-year. He stepped down as a regular member. John
Okay.
Taylor has agreed to step up. And Joe said he would serve as an alternate on that committee. So we would appoint Joe Palmieri in that group, but his
Okay.
term would be a 1-year term.
Well, let's take Joe as a separate motion, and maybe take a motion to appoint all of the highlighted 2024s who are offering to renew their service.
Okay, hold on. This is for the 3-year and 5-year terms then, is what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Mary Lou Gallup's name is spelled incorrectly.
Okay.
It should be Gallup, I believe.
All right. Terry, do you have that?
I will make sure that's corrected.
All right. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you, Terry.
Did I hear a motion?
I'm still just double checking, sorry.
We can pick it up in discussion, so I will make a motion that we approve the 3-year terms as listed, highlighted in yellow, and the 5-year terms for the 2 that are highlighted, holding off on Joe Palmieri's 1-year appointment.
I think there are 3 highlighted in the 5-year.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, yes, 3.
Yeah. Okay. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll bring to a vote. All in favor, Rick,
Aye.
Tricia,
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries. Is there a motion to appoint Joe to a 1-year term as an alternate?
So moved.
Is there a
I
second?
second. Oh,
All right,
sorry,
motion-
Andrew.
That's okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, Rick,
Aye.
Tricia,
Aye.
Andrew is aye, and the motion carries. And we have appointed officials for 1-year terms. We didn't do this group here?
Not yet.
We didn't.
So
Okay,
on this one, there is a change with highway superintendent. Mark Shippey should be Jeff Johnston.
yep. Okay, Rick, do you want to move this group with that correction?
Well, it goes over to another page, right?
Yep,
Let me look at that page. Yes, I would like to make an alteration to the second page. No, I don't. Sorry, brain cramp. Wrong one. All
This
three
actually
pages.
goes on to, yeah,
All three
pages.
pages. All 3 pages. I move we appoint the 1-year terms for these appointed officials with the one change of highway superintendent to Mark Shippey to Jeff Johnston.
I
all right,
second.
and the motion has been made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, Tricia,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Andrew's aye, and the motion carries. And I think we are now at, we've
Should have a
completed the
List of
appointment.
election workers.
Yeah, we got that as a late addendum.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Let me switch documents.
The
okay,
election.
so that's in the appointment category, but a separate page, yeah?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, have you all had a chance to review the election?
Yes, that
proposed
was in the
appointee?
addendum that Terry sent. Yeah,
Yep.
yes, I
Is
did.
there a motion to appoint the election workers?
I would
I'll move.
move. Tricia?
I'll second.
All right, I would move that we appoint both the election workers and the registrars listed on that document.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, Tricia,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Andrew's aye, and the motion carries. And I think, let me see. So we are now, anything left on appointments that we've missed?
No.
Okay, so now we're at reorganization of the board and representation to various committees. So this will become effective on July 1st. Is that correct, Trish, Terry?
However, the board would like, it can be July 1st, it can be immediate.
Okay. I don't know. Do you all
Our
have a
next-
preference in that
No.
regard?
We could start with our next meeting, which gets us to the 1st, right? Almost.
I've been too quiet here.
Lights went out on you, huh?
Yeah.
Let's go with the 1st. That's the next
Okay.
meeting.
The
I'm good with
first is
that.
our next meeting. Okay, so that sounds like it works. So normally, I guess starting at the top, we normally rotate the chair of the select board position, sort of down through the ranks. Terry, who is next up?
I believe Rick is next as chair.
Okay, so I was chair this year in sort of half the year, or how does that work? I was actually the vice chair this year.
You were chair the year before, however.
That's true. I was filling in for Margaret the year before. And
You can choose however you want to do it.
okay.
I think
Is
we're
that
so
something you'd
far out
like
of
to do?
rotation.
I mean, yeah, it's technically, I think I would be chair this year in the normal order of, clerk to vice chair to chair rotation that we do, but I've actually been the chair for God knows how many years now. So is that something that you want to move up to, Rick?
Yes, I would like to do that.
Okay, that's fine with me. So Tricia, just for your heads up, that would put you in the on deck position, and then I would be following you behind that in the normal rotation. Are you good with that?
Well, I have a 1-year term, so
Right.
because I'm finishing off this one, so I think
So
this
the
would
way
be a
that would work,
discussion.
Tricia, is if you decided not to continue your service or didn't get reelected, then I would be on deck, because whoever came in would be brand new at that point.
Right. That makes sense.
But
So I'm fine with this.
okay. So let's see. Do we want to do this motion by motion or take it all in one swoop?
Given the hour, let's do the swoop.
Okay. So the next piece is identifying liaison roles. I would just say that I would like to continue as the highway liaison, if that works for you, Rick. And just to work through this transition to our new superintendent. And Tricia, the past practice has generally been that the newest or incoming select board member does the town offices liaison project. Are you both kind of comfortable with continuing in that tradition, or no?
I am, if you are, Rick. I think it would
Absolutely.
be a great way to learn how everything works.
Right.
Absolutely. And I'm just finishing my first year, and it was invaluable. It was the best advice I got. So yes, you definitely should be the liaison to the town office.
Okay.
Harry, did you have a comment about that?
No, I think it'd be great.
Okay. And Rick, are you okay with continuing in the police role?
Yes, especially since I would like to continue in the Police Services Advisory Committee. I think they go hand in hand, and I would think it would make sense for me to continue in the police liaison role.
Okay, so you're signing up for those two things then?
Yeah, I think that's an
Which two?
appointed thing, not
Oh,
part
yeah.
of the organization.
Great. So the remaining, some of the next tier of groups that we have, those are our major departments, and then I would say the second next tier of groups are the Shelburne Senior Center, the Pratt Library. Terry, remind me, what are the other town roles there?
Well, just the senior center is a town department, so they'll still need a liaison until their district is up and running.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is we've
So
got,
that they're not, yeah, they're like highway, police, and town office.
right.
And then after that, we have several committee representations that are regional.
Yes, no, I
And
know,
you-
I'm getting to those, but I wanted to get the town stuff taken care of. And the other one that's sort of a question mark for me, that based on our past few meetings, is do we want or need or want to recommend a liaison role to the recreation committee?
Well, if I may, I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea, but even better, I think we need someone on the school committee. That's like half of our town budget. And
Well, we have 2 elected representatives serving on our school committee.
I understand that, but it would be good if there was somebody from the select board there. I'd be happy to just be their contact for the select board.
I guess. I mean, they are separately elected reps who report in to the board, you know, both in writing and in our meetings. Anybody is welcome to speak with them, but I don't know, do we want to sort of formally liaise with our elected representatives?
I don't think we should start that. I think Tricia can feel free to go ahead and attend whatever she wants on those things, and give us an update on things of interest to the board and the town without making it an official role. On the recreation, that's an elected group. It's not a department, so it doesn't warrant a liaison relationship. And being an elected group, unlike the appointed groups of Energy Committee, Emergency Management Committee, so on, I don't think a select board voted representative would be in order for that either.
Well, that's a good point, Rick. I appreciate your parsing of the town roles there, and so I'll withdraw that idea. I think I was just floating it out there because we had some fairly vigorous discussion among those board members that sounded like they needed some connection to our board to, but anyway.
I think that's in their court, and I wish they would.
Yeah. All right. So we'll let them approach us then for the time being. So Rick, you have been our rep to the senior center. Do you want to continue that until the West County group is kind of more up and running?
You were the rep to the senior center. You took it over from Bob.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yes, you hadn't had any reports on it. I thought they hadn't met.
Sorry, I completely spaced out on that. So I thought that was you.
No, that's been you. I had a whole bunch. So, but that might be one that Tricia may have interest in if you're.
Are you interested, Tricia, in that role?
Well, I've been sort of working just in my other, private capacity on a project with them and other members of the general area. So I just don't know how much all of this, how much work is involved with all of that. And I don't want to overextend myself because I'm feeling the town office is going to be a big thing, right? And then on top of that, this transition that they're going through with the senior center, I don't want to be, not fulfilling my duties if I've bitten off too much.
No, that's very wise. I think, Terry, just a question about that is, do you have an estimate of what kind of transitional role we're talking about here in terms of the remainder of the senior center?
I have no idea. My gut is that they're hoping by next fiscal year to be independent of the town. So it would be a 1-year liaisonship, but I think it's more being support person for Julie, the director, and the staff there. It's outside of the district stuff at this point. They're working independently to pull that off.
Okay. And Rick, are you interested in that role?
It's not that I'm not interested. It's I have a whole bunch of them too, as you know. Are you going to go back to the Regional Transit Authority? Would you add me fill in?
Well, I guess the ones that I'm willing and interested to continue with are the Pratt Committee and the FERCog group. So I will have Highway, if you all agree to that, I would have Highway, Pratt, and FERCog. And Rick,
Pratt's not a department, though. It's not a liaison relationship, right?
It is actually in the Pratt Building Committee's, what is it, their bylaws. A member of the select board sits on that.
Okay.
so
Why don't we have
like
we've never had
the Emergency Management Committee.
Oh, it's down bottom. It's down the bottom of that next page. Okay, I get it. I see it.
And Andrew, you're on the Downtown Village Task Force as well.
That has kind of gone to rest. So
okay,
I'm happy to sort of stay in touch with Terry about downtown related stuff because I have experience with that, but we're currently sort of in between any kind of organized effort in that regard. Am I right about that, Terry?
That is correct.
Yeah.
okay. So senior center,
I can just continue to be Julie's liaison because she's been kind of out on a raft for a bit.
Okay, if you're willing to do that, Terry, that seems like a good approach, especially given my dismal track record the last few months here.
Well, that kind of makes sense, Terry, because since I'll be doing the town office, when things come up, that could just be part of what you and I talk about when we talk about what's going on. You can just let me know what's going on with the senior center. Does that seem reasonable? I just
Sure.
don't want to be too overwhelmed with everything.
Sure.
So,
Great.
okay.
I'm the
So-
retired one, Terry. If that's too much, I'm willing to take it on if it's too much to ask of you.
Let's,
So,
can we?
Rick,
can
do you
we-
have committees and groups that you are interested and willing to continue with? Because you had a number of them.
Yeah, on that sheet, I would like to stay with the Veteran Service Center. I'll stay with the Franklin Regional Transit Authority.
Okay.
Since if it sounded like you preferred to go over to
I'm happy to take a break from that. Yeah, I'm.
all
it's
right.
Yeah.
And Tricia's new, she's got a lot to do, and Terry's swamped and I'm retired. So I'll do the senior center if you would like. It's one more year, right, while they transition. So that we don't have to foist it on Terry.
Does that make sense to you, Terry? Because it sounded like we had another approach there.
Oh,
But-
I thought it was for Terry to take it on.
I
Right.
will take
I
it
don't-
on and report to Trish. It's
Oh.
really
Yeah,
not
part
a
of the
heavy
town
load.
liaison thing.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I missed the report to Trish part.
Yeah.
That's cool. So
Okay.
Trish will be the liaison, but through a
Terry.
report.
Yeah. Terry will do more of the day-to-day. Yeah.
Got it. I like it.
Okay, and then for the Franklin County Planning Board, John Wheeler is going to continue serving in that, not me, because that was part of my role on the when I was elected to the Shelburne Planning Board. I was the liaison. So I emailed John about that, and he said he would be the Franklin County Planning Board person.
Okay.
And Chuck Washer would go to some of those meetings too, as the representative of the Shelburne Select Board. But I
Okay.
didn't know all the years that I went that he was the building inspection program person. So I don't know if that needs clarification.
I don't know. And Terry, I see among the regional groups, the building inspection program, the solid waste district. Do we typically have liaison groups or people on those things?
I've been the solid waste district liaison since Joan Wilson stepped down.
That's what I
Anyone wants
thought.
that.
Are you okay to continue on there?
I am, unless someone really wants it.
Okay.
Um,
Rick and Tricia, are you good with that, or do you want to jump in there?
I got a boatload. I'm good.
I do.
Okay. All right. And what about the building inspection program?
I will reach out to Chuck to see if he wants to continue in that capacity.
Okay.
And I would like to say, for all of these things that you're doing, Terry, in my role as the liaison to the town office, just keep me aware and updated on what's going on. And if there's any problems, whatever, I'll help solve them.
Okay.
Or however we do that. So we'll find our groove.
All right.
Good. So Terry, have you been keeping notes on all this conversation?
Yes, I have.
Great, because have we missed anything, or have we pretty much covered it?
No, we've covered everything.
All right, I think we're ready for the fell swoop motion to accept.
I would move we accept the reorganization of boards and member representations for the next fiscal year as agreed this evening.
I second.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Tricia,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Andrew's aye, and the motion carries. All right.
Thank you.
All right, that was big. We got a lot done.
We did.
Getting punchy.
And those will be effective starting July 1st.
Yes.
And we are now on to any other business. Our next regular meeting is July 1st. Terry, is there anything else in the any other?
No, thank you.
All right. And just to give you all a heads up, I do have a vacation scheduled from July 15th to the 28th. So I think I will miss one meeting in there. And I'll be back for the end of the month meeting.
Okay.
Uh,
Do you folks need me in town this week? Because I'm not there, but I could come home if I have to.
I think we're okay.
Okay, thank
I
you.
can do it Wednesday or whenever.
Warrants will be ready on Thursday because of the Wednesday holiday.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I can do it on Thursday, and if Andrew can, you're good. Trish.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm actually leaving town Friday, but I can do them on Thursday before I go.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Wow.
Because I was going to say I could be there Friday. So Friday
Yeah.
the
Did I
3rd.
make one request? I'm going to be on vacation the week of the 5th through the 12th. So if we could cancel the July 15th meeting and just meet on the 29th.
That's
Um,
fine with me. Because I'm not
Yes.
going to be there anyway, so it's really up to you two.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, without Terry, we're in big trouble. So, so I would
Truer
say
words were never spoken.
All right. So
Thank
Rick,
you.
your first meeting as chair will be on the 29th then.
on the 1st.
No, yes.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, on the 1st. Yes, you're correct. All right,
Okay.
so our final item, it looks like, is correspondence, which is Jillian Ellis from 19 Main Street regarding speeding concerns on Main Street. Your thoughts?
As liaison to police, I did bring this up with the chief. He gave me a nice report. I had him pull records for Main Street. It's gotten dark since I started this meeting. Let's see.
My alarm will be going off soon for morning.
In the
I know.
last 16 months, there were 99 documented incidents on Main Street. It included motor vehicle accidents with no injuries, motor vehicle complaints, motor vehicle violations, patrol in the area, and radar in the area. The chief noted that patrols and radar sessions that do not result in a documented incident are not accurately tracked. And they are going to make a change to more accurately track their presence on Main Street, collect data in regard to this complaint about increased speeds on Main Street, and develop a plan to address it based on the data they received during the extra concentration they intend to give it, have already started giving it actually. So we can respond to this person. I assume we need to say that we have received the complaint that steps are being taken to develop a plan to give more attention to speeds on Main Street.
Okay.
That's
Tricia,
great.
any thoughts on your end?
I think that's the best plan going forward, is to use the data that we have and then get more data to see what else they can find out about. I don't really think speed bumps are a great thing. So there's other things that can be done to slow traffic down, which might work instead. That would be less intrusive. So let's see what the police share with us, and then we can let Miss Ellis know that we heard her and we would like to we're going to do something about it. We just don't know what it is exactly yet till we have the data.
Agreed.
Yes, I think that sounds good. Rick, if as liaison, you can follow up on that. I would just note, because it's a related concern, I did have a conversation today as I was heading here into this room with a resident on Church Street who has raised the issue several times now about speeding and accidents on Church Street, both in front of the post office and on the hill going up toward Maple. And she noted that Church Street may be the only street in the village that has parking on both sides of the street, which she feels is leading to more accidents and, you know, people banging into people's car doors and other things, that some of which she's witnessed. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I did encourage her to put her concerns in writing, and so that we could, you know, bring that to the chief and perhaps discuss them again. But that's yet another concern about traffic in the village that you should know about.
I will be happy to bring that to the chief. When you and I met on Church Street to view the wall in question,
Yeah.
I said, where do I park? Turns out the resident whose house we were actually looking at has no parking and parks in the neighbors on the other side of the road. But when I parked in front of their house, I didn't see a no parking sign. I noticed that there wasn't a whole lot of room between my truck and the other side of that road. So that's a good point. I will bring it up and report back.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we are on to public comment. I see a hand raised by Jeff Bettner. Do you want to make a public comment, Jeff?
Just in addition to that, while I was out doing the streetlight work, Peter Moser on Water Street also mentioned that he's having a lot of issues with speeders on Water Street, which I was really surprised because it's kind of a dead end. I mean, you can't go very fast for very far, so I wouldn't have thought that. But he complained that it was really a problem. So I'll have him write a note or something to the police as well, and just to add it to the list to have him watch, because he's just concerned that it's just going way too crazy.
Good.
I guess we got a few of them out there.
Yes. All righty. Well, thank you for that. Is there any further public comment? Hearing none, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right. And all in favor?
Aye. Woohoo.
Well, thank you for your stamina. We're now at just about 9 o'clock. So good night and good luck.
Good job, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you. See you
guys.
soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Away.